Okay, it is after 8:30, so we will go ahead and call this 2023 budget workshop to order. They're rowdier than the crowd.
Wow. Oh, let's go.
Yeah. Well, I think the mayor has called the meeting to order. I think I heard that. I couldn't hear. Is that what you did? So,
Everybody needs to hold up their signs.
we want more money. We want more money. Welcome to our 2000 FY 23-24 budget workshop. Look forward to today, and I'm going to turn it over. I'll interject through today, but I'm going to turn it over to the budget team, to Brian and Adam and Jenny, and let them get started.
All right, thanks, John. So yeah, welcome to the FY24 budget workshop. As usual, you've received about 4 memos throughout the month of April detailing everything we've been working through. Big thanks to all the staff in the room for all their hard work. I know it's difficult every year going through this exercise, and appreciate their patience and flexibility. They do a lot of work to maintain a lean operating side, so we can do as much as we can on the outward-facing project side and employee benefits and salaries. So big thank you to them in this process. So today, a couple things we want to achieve is just an understanding of what is in the manager's recommended 24 budget, and then also prioritize the level of service and corresponding rates needed to fund those services for this upcoming budget year. So we'll start with a brief introduction, dive right into governmental funds at 8:45, and try to time a break around 10:15. We'll stop and have discussion along the way about different direction points and decision points that we'll have for the city council. We'll jump into the enterprise funds at 10:30. Hopefully break for lunch right around noon. That will just be off-site on your own. And then we'll finish up with a discussion of special appropriations and getting that final level. If we feel very comfortable, we'll probably ask for a motion to approve those separate from the budget in the room today. And then we'll reserve any time at the end for any additional direction and discussion. So just kind of setting the stage, this is a reval year. This is a big year. So it's a lot about reval rates and services. And I want to talk to us a little bit about our historical plans and commitments, what we've accomplished with those plans, what our service model looks like moving forward, setting the right rate for a community of our size and our unique circumstances. And as John has said, I don't know if he's actually said it, but we've used it as a quote, building a strong foundation for our growing future. I think this is a branding piece from our communications department. So taking us back in time to this really high-tech calendar and color-coded boxes. This was from our last reval and the FY20 budget process. So this was in the spring of 2019. We were looking at this slide, and we were talking about a whole lot of different priorities that were on the plate from the council's retreat in 2019. Those included things like 12 firefighters for a safer grant, welcome Bill Moss, a fire engine ladder replacement, the fire station debt, the police department debt, 7th Avenue streetscape, and medical insurance funded at 50% for dependents. And what we showed was, when all of this would occur over the next 4 to 5 years and when those costs would come online. And each box up in the top right correlated with a point in time on the map, essentially here, what I'm calling a map. And you can see where we were at the beginning. These are equivalent pennies of surplus or deficit, not including any sort of inflation or anything, just baseline. And by the end of FY24, we were estimating we would need about 12 pennies to fund all of those priorities over the next 4 to 5 years. As time progressed and we were moving through this, we got to the FY22 budget process, and the pay and class study became a major priority of City Council, and we ended up increasing staff salaries by 10% that July 1st. And that resulted in us communicating, here's what your model is going to look like. You're going to need 3 targeted tax increases and a 23% revaluation in FY24. And we presented that for FY22. So we added on to the plate of projects we were looking at to fund. In FY23, we received ARP funds, American Rescue Plan funds, and our sales tax was performing really well. So what we were communicating last year was, hey, we had these 3 targeted tax increases. We've done one of them. We've raised it 3 cents to this point. What we think we can do is we can float this year out. We kind of called it our float year, right up in here. And it was the year of no. We did no rate increases really anywhere outside of regular water and sewer rate increases. And we said, let's get to reval and figure out where we are and use the reval as our starting point to figure out how much we need to pay for these projects without increasing taxes this year. And in the meantime, we've been accomplishing a lot. We've built the new police department headquarters. We're starting the 7th Avenue Streetscape project. We've replaced 2 fire engines. We're building Fire Station 1 and Edwards Park. And we also, most notably received an ISO Class 1 from all the investment that's been made in the fire service over the past 4 years, in combination with their great leadership, training, and response to the public. One other item to note is that top right graph shows the consumer price index from July 1st, 2020 to an estimate of July 1st, 23. So you can see kind of how inflation has occurred in the market since then, about 17%. Your city council action to date has raised staff raises about 28%. So we've done really well keeping up with the market itself. That doesn't represent necessarily what is occurring around us with our neighbors. So this is just one way of looking at how we're keeping up with cost of living. Talking a little bit about service alignment. So I saw this at the School of Government, and it made me think of the parking triangle, and I couldn't help but put this in here. But it's a Venn diagram. It's not a triangle. But essentially, it works the same. A lot of this is a typical response from citizenry, right? We want stable services, we want low density, and we want low taxes. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist, right? We can't. There's no overlap of these 3 items, right? And currently, we kind of live in the stable service, low density world. We do have a lot of projects that are entitled in the pipeline, and you'll see those in our models of when those come online, and we'll highlight a little bit more specifically what that looked like in the past as well. But that's where we're operating right now. So the property tax being our only dedicated controlled revenue source as a local government in North Carolina is the key to fund all these priorities. So talking about setting the right tax rate. That's what we're going to do mostly today. So this is just a small sampling of full service municipalities across the state. Tried to pick different metro areas from the Southern Pines area to Wake County to the Triad to right around our neighboring area and out east. So you can see the average of just this group is about 52, right where we're at today. Our current proposed tax rate in the budget is 50 cents. So it would be a 2-cent decrease. However, that is above revenue neutral, and we'll get into the details of that as we go through the day. Other items that we are working with in setting the tax rate is our unique situation in Hendersonville as a high service city. We have a lot of tax exempt properties that are providing services to citizens. The estimated assessed value from the 23 tax scroll is about $309 million of tax exempt properties. That equates to about 5.3 equivalent pennies on the tax rate, or $1.5 million in revenue. And it's about 14% of our total value from that tax scroll. The image on the right shows our cost of service model that we've seen before. showing kind of the impacts of tax exempt properties and kind of what the business and commercial group has to pay to prop up those services in the city. Also, the size of Hendersonville is, we talk very often about how we play bigger than we are. We have two predominantly residential municipalities on either side of us, and we serve a very large county as the central commercial district. Our population to county population is about 13% as a county seat in the full service municipality. The state average for the county seat to county population is right around 36%. So, yes, sir.
The graphs you showed at the back, when you showed all those other, you don't have to go back to it.
That's one, yeah.
So for most of those cities, they are in that 36% range.
Right, absolutely. An outlier would be something like Clayton. Clayton's in Wake County. It's not the county seat. It's not Raleigh, right? It's a bedroom community of Raleigh. So Clayton would be much smaller.
Right, I got you. Okay.
And we also have the cost of service model available if we want to look at it. Yeah.
Comparison to other cities roughly our size and their percent of tax exempt properties compared to our tax exempt properties?
I don't have that, no, but we could probably do some digging. It would take a bit to figure that one out. But we can definitely look at that.
So it seems like a lot, like
Mm-hmm.
percentage, right? Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, we can absolutely look at the tax exempt properties.
What is the highest valued tax exempt property in the city?
So from the scroll, 89 million, Jenny, I think is the large one on that graph.
And what is that property?
Carolina Village.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
89 million.
So thinking about, our foundation and our tax rate, the other key item that plays into our tax rate is our fund balance. And that is really what's helped carry us through. We keep it pretty tight within 5 percentage points of the stated goal of the LGC of 25%. I think internally, we would agree from a financial perspective that 25% is a good place to be, and just a little bit above that ideally. The things that fund balance really help us with are flexibility to respond to unforeseen circumstances and opportunities. So, for example, a housing assistance group comes in and says, hey, we really want to fund this project this year. It's November, we've already approved the budget. This fund balance gives us the flexibility to jump in and say, yeah, let's go get that affordable housing and put it into the community. It gives us flexibility there. It gives us capacity to respond to natural disasters, say a really bad wildfire or flood. That fund balance is there to stand that up and help us maintain cash flow and payroll while we're responding to that disaster. The third point being cash flow. Fund balance, really the balance part of this, of the term, it's a point in time. We're looking at our fund balance at a point in time. However, throughout the year, that cash flow goes up and down. At some points, we have very little money invested and have just a few, weeks of cash on hand. So it's very important for us to maintain a level that throughout the year, we can fund our payroll, fund our checks, fund our, all the payments we have to make throughout the year. So fund balance assists in that. Yes, sir.
On the fund balance, you said at the beginning, you said LGC recommended. It's really more than just a recommendation.
Yeah, it is. It's a requirement.
Right.
Their recommended is 8% in the general statute, but by their standards, it's 25% for us. They look at it, and they are getting very active in coming in and even taking over communities that aren't keeping their finances in
So
shape.
for all intents and purposes, it is a requirement that we must follow.
Absolutely.
It's not like we could choose not to do it. We don't have that option.
Yeah,
It would be a painful process.
and to
Yes.
Brian's point, both the state treasurer and the state auditor have bills in the General Assembly now that, ranging from if you don't get your audit done in time, they're going to withhold sales tax revenue from cities if your audit is delayed, to that the auditor has to, state auditor is going to have to approve who our auditor is, and you're going to go through their office. I mean, there are 2 or 3 bills. Don't know that they make crossover, which is last week or this week, but the folks in those 2 offices are very much watching what municipalities and particularly municipalities and counties are doing across the state of North Carolina. So it's definitely a changing environment for us.
Right, yeah. So it is a requirement, whether it's an
Absolutely.
ordinance or not.
Yeah.
We would get in trouble if we did not observe 25% fund balance.
Right. And I think we run a very tight ship there. I mean, we do well, I think, every year. I think the 24% range definitely scares our finance director a little more. John and I are like, we'll manage the budget and make sure we don't hit it. But yeah, John B does not like being that close. But it is, it is due service to the citizens, right? We're not just hoarding a ton of money in fund balance. We're actually delivering services to the community.
I think my point is just to residents is, like, we're required to keep that money in fund balance. It's not
absolutely.
like we would get in a lot of trouble with the state if we did not have it.
That's correct. And we don't have a huge amount over that either.
Right.
The other two items I want to highlight is, obviously the ability for us to issue loans. This fund balance is a requirement for that. And then also our bond rating. When we last did our bond rating, I guess it was 2021 or 22, we got a AA+, and it was a really big accomplishment. Just like the ISO 1, very unheard of for a city our size. AA+ is not regular for a small community like us. So that was something to be really proud of, and it's a really good bond rating.
Do a sticker for that
We didn't have Chief, do you have the stickers?
AA plus stickers, John Buchanan?
Did you bring those? No? Okay. We'll work on that. But so right now, our estimated ending balance for FY24 with the current recommended budget that we're about to talk about in detail is about 1.35 pennies above the minimum requirement, and it's really not available in the future years to support projects. So that's our starting point. So just to recap a little bit from where we've come from, ultimately there was 14 cents needed since the last reval to fund the priorities. We've only increased 3 cents to date. Sales tax and ARP have been huge in floating us to this point and minimizing the impact. If we go with the recommended tax rate today, it's about 8 cents above revenue neutral, but that includes an additional priorities. So just the old priorities, it would have been 7. So we did about 10 cents on what we communicated was needed for 14.
So I think, before Brian gets into the foundation, I think from a council standpoint, you can be proud of the work that you've done. We put out there the worst-case scenario, and we've obviously done better than that, and I think provided a great level of service for our citizens. Really proud of the new HPD. You'll have a fire department fleet that will be in very good shape. The equipment we're buying, we have a 20-year-old aerial apparatus that from time to time requires mechanical work. We don't like to talk about it, but it does more often than we want it to. But you'll have a new aerial apparatus that is a 20-year vehicle. It's 15-year prime service and then 5 years of reserve. You'll have your frontline engines will be in very good shape. Again, those are 15-year, vehicles that will serve our citizens. You got your ISO rating, your staffing, your battalion chiefs. Again, I talked about the HPD and the service they provide. Other things as it relates to. As I came to work this morning, saw the mini golf, and I think you're going to be really pleased with the work of our contractor. Go home that way today. They are making good progress. I think the public will be ecstatic. I know we went through a lot of consternation about the mini golf and the putt-putt, but I think it is really going to be a nice facility. We're reactivating a historic park. I mean, let's say it's one of our first parks, and we are reactivating a park that has been dormant for a number of years. And you've been able to do that with the budget, the foundation we set, 4 years ago. And you've been able to do it at less of an impact to our citizens as we originally projected. So I think you should, be proud of your successes. And we're going to continue to budget sustainably and in a conservative manner, in a way that will give you the worst case scenario, but we'll manage the dollars in a way that that we're spending the dollars wisely for the public, and we're investing in the future in the fact that as you set the tax rate today, we know that the economy will keep going. However, it might go slower, but the economy is going to keep going, and there's an investment. And where that rate today will help us fund services in the future. And so I think it's just important that that's what we've looked at from a budget team as we put our proposal together. So just want to reiterate that and the work that they've done to this point.
Thank you, John. So rounding out here, we had our retreat recently. We have a lot of big, ambitious goals and priorities, and we know we're going to go after those in the next 4 years. Today really does set the foundation about what we want to do for the future. The current recommended budget, we're going to keep chipping away at this, small bites. If there's anything big, that's not necessarily in the funding structure right now. So, but we are going to, we're going to make strides at accomplishing these goals. However, any major borrowings or cash investments are not in the current proposed budget related to these goals. So just to talk about what we're going to ask you today. So give you a heads up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Adam and Jenny to run through everything. So the taxes and rates. Right now it's a 50-cent recommended tax rate for the general fund per $100. Main Street and 7th are both at 21 cents. So we'll detail those. We're going to pause on those and ask for feedback. Water sewer rates you've heard about, plus 11 to 12% on average, and a decision on system development fees. A stormwater rate recommendation of $6 per ERU and a $300 cap, which is a $1 increase over the current rate. $3 increase to sanitation rates. Benefits funded at a COLA of 5% plus a 2% for a match on 401k. 15 total added positions, 6 in the general fund, 6 water sewer, 2 downtown, and 1 in parking services. We had 52 total requested positions. They can raise their signs, 52, I don't know. And then we'll finally get to special appropriations. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Brian. So Mayor and Council, I don't have as many funnies as we did in the March workshop, but it is Cinco de Mayo, so hopefully we get through this with some cheer and some festivity. Hopefully deliver you guys a good message that helps you make a decision for the best of the public today. So we're going to spend most of our time on the general fund. We're going to move into the Main Street and 7th Avenue MSDs, followed by the Enterprise Fund. So I'm going to kick it off with the general fund, and then after we finish up, turn over to Jenny for the MSDs. So starting us off, and this applies to all of our fund overviews, we're going to provide information on the FY22 estimated budget and also our actuals. We're also going to focus on looking at our FY23 adopted budget compared to the FY23 revised, the FY23 adopted budget to the FY24 recommended, and any adjustments we made during the FY24 budget development process we feel are significant that you guys might need to know about. So in all of these funds, we'll cover revenues, expenditures, fund balance, and other strategic plans and future priorities. Some final housekeeping items, just some things we want you all to remember. Budgeting is both an art and a science. We're really good at estimating, but we don't guarantee anything. We get very close. We budget conservatively, and we do that with the understanding that we will adapt to unforeseen opportunities. You all notice this mostly in sales tax revenue adjustments. Our recommended budget is sometimes referred to in the slides as the adjusted budget. It's the same thing. And our estimates are made at the beginning of each fiscal year. We don't change those, and we use them as a measure of our accuracy in forecasting. Finally, any shaded bars or dashes you see in the presentation are going to be estimated amounts for FY24 and future years.
Thank you
Yes, sir.
for all of that.
Of course. So in the general fund, as Brian mentioned, the items that we're going to want direction on by the end of the presentation, and feel free to pause and deliberate however you'd like, whether it's in the middle or right at the end. but we do need guidance on the effective property tax rate. Right now, the recommendation is 50 cents per $100 of value. We're seeking direction on the cost of living adjustment. 5% is the current recommendation. There's also included in our recommendation a 2% match for 401K, 7 FTE additions in the general fund, and we're going to discuss any removed items from operating and capital during the budget development process.
Adam, is there a conflict related to FTEs in the previous slide? Did Brian's slide say?
Yeah, it's really 6.5. We're
Okay.
having it's the split of the business systems analyst between general fund and
Okay.
water sewer, but
I
yeah,
just-
that's the,
I want to make sure council was clear whether that was 6 or 7. Okay, thank you.
We can clarify that when we get to that slide. So just looking, initial look, our estimates actual for FY '22. You all were presented this at the March workshop, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I did just want to provide this information in case we needed to flip back to it or refer to it at any other time. The key takeaways here are our revenue estimate to actual was only a 3.7% variance. We were only off by 1.2% on our expenditure estimates, and at the end of the year, we ended up adding $126,935 to fund balance, so we ended FY '22 with a total fund balance of $9,673,382. Also that year, we began the paying class study. We implemented the 65th percentile in January, and then in FY '23, day one, we implemented the 75th percentile. So looking at FY '23, the adopted budget to revised budget, the most significant changes you'll notice are in the unrestricted intergovernmental revenue source, which is primarily sales tax. So we have received on average about $75,000 more over our estimates in sales tax collections for the 7 periods that we've collected. Another item you'll notice below the line, if I can get this to work, we initially were going to transfer in $1.2 million for ARP funds, and to clean those and use the funds for the strategic priorities council's identified, we went ahead and transferred in the full ARP amount, which will be transferred out for use as indicated by council. So $2 million for grants to nonprofits and the remaining amount to support operations.
You said will be. So we've already selected those. That
Yes.
money has not actually been sent to those organizations, has not been? Okay.
Yeah, we're working on contracts right now.
Yeah, I got
So,
you, yeah, okay.
And then also there's a debt increase in FY '23 for debt service on the HPD project and partial payments on the 2022 limited obligation bond. So moving away from the prior year and the current year, this is the one meme I put in the presentation. The millennials got to do it. So we're going to talk about the big picture first and then jump into the details. So we're going to discuss this for about 5 hours. You all might notice this is similar to the tables that were provided in your budget memos through the month of April. There are some minor updates to the recommended budget. Since that point, we've made minor tweaks as new information, more detailed and precise information has come through. We've also adjusted to assume our modest case scenario rather than best case. The reason being there are some market factors we're uncertain about, so we wanted to make it a little bit more conservative going into FY '24. One thing I'll highlight is the Fed did increase the federal funds rate by another 25 basis points yesterday. All my days are running together. And these figures also include any below-the-line budget items, so I wrapped it up for simplicity's sake. Yes, sir.
On the expenditure estimate, what do we use for our inflation guess for next year?
So our expenditures in general, I think operating-wise, are going to be inflated 103%.
So 3%.
On our capital projects, we typically inflate those on an individual basis, so it varies depending on what the project is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think, from the capital side, and Brent Detwiler's in the room, I think we continually watch real-time construction numbers, construction bidding, to really forecast where we're going
Right.
forward, because that's a ever-moving target. So I think that's right, Brent. We continue to, they subscribe to several sources that they look at those numbers from a capital just to track real-time bidding, so we can use those in our estimation.
And the expenditure estimate, what percentage of that is what we control? In other words, like our employees, where we set the rates. What percentage of that is?
We have a few slides put together that I think will
Okay.
answer that question.
Gotcha.
Here in just a
Sorry.
couple clicks. No, you're all good. Before we get too far into the expenditures, let's talk a little bit about the revenues, and then I can answer that question on the expenditures. So, on the revenue side, our FY '23 to FY '24 adjusted budget is a 24.6% increase. Again, that's due to reval and the recommendation to go above the revenue neutral tax rate. So that rate recommendation as it stands is 50 cents per $100. That's 2 cents less than the existing 52-cent per $100 rate. In FY '23, our value per penny is $2.29 and $89. In FY '24, based on reappraisal, that value per penny is increasing to $2.89, $2.47. So per penny, that's a $64,000 or 28% increase, which leads us to our recommended $14,292,500 budget for our ad valorem or property tax revenues. And at the end of the year, based on our estimates, again, provided on that modest case scenario, we anticipate a total ad valorem property tax collection of $14,868,469. And I also wanted to provide this trend over time that we hit on in March. So this really shows the assessed value in the city of Hendersonville, pretty much from the market recession in 2008 to now. So based on the timeline, we did receive a favorable revaluation in FY '07-08, and really before this time, we had significantly less appraised value. So that 1.7 at the time was a very significant rate hike. And then you notice in FY '11-12, the reflection of that recession occurred in our reappraisal. However, after that point, we steadily increased up to FY '19-20, where we got another pretty significant reappraisal, which leads us to the current reappraisal, FY '23-24, where we're expecting a total reappraisal of 26.26%. So this is just another way of looking at those changes. So rather than looking at the dollars, this is a percent change year over year. So you can see in '07-08, there was a 29.92% reappraisal. The following years had slight increases, followed by a 6.78% decrease in FY '11-12 and FY '12-13. Again, the most significant years here are reappraisal years. So that occurs every 4, FY '07-08, FY '11-12, and then again, the major increases, FY '19-20 and our current year, 26.26%.
So Adam, in this slide, in that reval, which would have been, what, 15, 16, or 16, there's a reval in there.
Yeah.
15, 16, there was almost zero growth.
Yeah, 0.8.
Yeah, 0.8 growth. So there was a reval in there. So we really went 2 revals with a decline. And the mayor and Jerry were here during that time, and remember us having that conversation, how flat or declining it was. So for about 2 reval cycles coming out of the recession, Great Recession, we were negative or flat for that period of time. So the last 2 have allowed us to regain some steam and do some things that we had not been able to do.
Adam, if you could go back to the percentage change slide real quick. One thing I want to highlight and what you'll see in your model is if you take a look, like John was saying, that decade, it was pretty flat. However, if you look at 13-14, there's growth of 4.23%. That's when Triangle Ballantyne expanded. So what we think and what we've built into our model based on the entitled project developments that haven't come online is we would start seeing a trend more in line with those better growth rates. And Triangle Ballantyne became one of our highest property taxpayers in the city at the time in FY14. I think they were second or third highest property taxpayer in the city. So depending on what happens with developments will help determine what our flexibility is to fund projects in the future. Just wanted to highlight that one kind of blip in this trend.
And I think historically we can look at, and this just shows the dynamics of our economy, of our macro economy in Hendersonville, looking at, you know, the citizenry and our tax base what we serve. You look at the, you know, historically, if you look at our revals, we have averaged in, you know, we've had a high of almost 30% there, which I think was an all-time high at that time. No,
No, we've had in the 30s in the
Okay.
early 2000s.
in the early 2000s. But since then, we've kind of stayed in the 20%, whereas you're seeing some of these other large percentage increases in the suburban communities around us. So I think it's important to point that out, that our economy is a little bit different than the rest of the county. And so that it changes the dynamics of how we operate.
All good points. Thank you, John and Brian. So that leads us into our discussion on the revenue neutral rate. And since we've already hit on it a few times, I thought it was important to inform you all how that's calculated. So the School of Government has a pretty solid and basic definition for it. So it's the tax rate that would produce the same levy as the prior year, which for us is FY23, adjusted for annual growth in the tax base. So our average growth is 1.8% from the FY20 reval to FY23 now. Our FY23 assessed value is about $2.3 billion, and our FY23 estimated levy is $11.9 million. So below that in the purple, you can see the calculation to produce that levy. Our FY24 assessed value is about $2.9 billion. So in order to get the same $11.9 million levy, our tax rate would need to be 0.4118 per $100. So again, calculation below that in the purple. And finally, we take that rate that would produce the same levy and we multiply that by that 1.8% growth rate, which produces a 0.4192 per $100 valuation revenue neutral tax rate. So 0.4192 is the revenue neutral tax rate. And we also wanted to provide some information regarding how different tax rates impact our taxpayers. So I'm not going to read all of these. It's a good reference, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But just looking at the table above, you can see we've extracted some actual properties and just provided some general information on them. But in FY23, using the FY23 assessed value, a $223,000 800 property, residential property with a 42-cent tax rate would pay $474 annually in property taxes. The same property at a 52-cent rate would pay $587 annually. So that's a $113 increase on the year for a 10% increase in the rate, or about $9.42 per month. And the same logic can be applied to different properties of different values. So just wanted to provide that for reference in case council was interested in understanding the value differences in various property appraised amounts. Yes, these are all properties within the city.
And then Adam, one thing to note, to talk about the accomplishments, that fire insurance rating decrease will have impacts on the commercial businesses. In just kind of big terms, it could be about $1,500 per rating decrease. So we decreased 2 ratings there could be substantial return on that investment, right? So we've paid in with the property tax, and we've received a great insurance rating on the back end for our businesses. So this is, I think, a good return on investment for our citizens.
And would that be every six, well, cars every 6 months, would that be like a yearly savings on,
That's correct, Chief.
on your,
Yeah, not
on your?
annual
okay.
savings, and it's going to vary depending on provider.
Right.
Is that real-time information for insurance companies? Like, I know a lot of times, like, a lot of home insurances increased for most people in North Carolina quite a bit this kind of year. And when I called and spoke to my home insurance, they explained to me that the state basically allowed them to levy a significant increase due to the flood damage and hurricane damage out east. So basically, everybody in the state will have to pay more homeowners insurance. And so, but that wasn't able to happen until maybe the state enacted like,
Right, will be effective
the rate?
July 1st.
okay,
We'll have that rating July 1st, Chief, correct? Yes.
okay.
So continuing down our revenue list, did want to highlight, again, the next most significant revenue source for the general fund, which is the sales tax. So that's an unrestricted intergovernmental source of revenue, which means it does not have to be obligated for any specific purpose. In FY23, as I mentioned, our actuals are trending on average $75,000 over our FY22 actuals. We have 5 remaining collections in FY23, so there's still opportunity to adjust the budget for additional projected increases in sales tax and use that resource for any other opportunities we may have not seen. In FY23, the current year, our end-of-year estimate in sales tax collection was $5.73 million, which is a $266,000 increase over our revised budget. So there's still wiggle room to increase sales tax to fund some priorities and potentially help out with the FY24 budget. So in FY24, we have budgeted for a 4% increase over FY23 actuals, which we feel is conservative based on trends. However, we're projecting a $5.97 million collection at the end of the year when all things are said and done.
When you say there's still wiggle room to increase sales tax, I don't think I understand what
So,
you're saying.
so we're projecting $5.73 million in collections, and currently we have a budget of $5.46 million.
So we're not increasing sales tax.
Correct.
So we sent a letter, the city council did, about a quarter-cent sales tax increase to the legislature. And what difference would that make as far as our revenues from sales tax? How much would that generate?
Yep, 2 more slides and I'll get, yep. So,
All on the edge of our seats, can't wait.
sorry. The anticipation is killing us all. So I wanted to provide the detail here on the table. So this is just, the more detailed look at the figures I just provided. So anything in blue is either budget or estimate. Anything in black is an actual. So again, just providing that difference in a more detailed view for your reference. If there are any specific questions on this, I'm happy to answer, but I think the picture has been presented. The prettier view is this chart. So this might be a little bit more helpful. One thing I do want to note before I hit on the figures presented is that really before FY18 here, sales tax collections were fairly low and consistent, pretty flatlined, and since FY18 we've had this almost exponential growth in sales tax year over year. So you can tell by the trend line in blue, these are the actual collections where our sales taxes have been over the last 5 fiscal years. Refunds, which are countywide and do not affect the income we receive specifically, are detailed by the green colored shaded area in the background. And then finally, we have a trend line, which shows, the average year-over-year monthly collections that we've received in sales tax. And you'll notice, again, in FY 18, we were, down in the 250s to 275s, and here in FY 23, we actually had to increase the number of bars, which is a great thing. We've received, upwards of $500,000 to $600,000 in sales tax revenue. Yes.
Are these nominal values? This is not adjusted for inflation, is it?
No, it's not adjusted for inflation.
Right,
These
so-
are actuals.
But even with that, this would reflect like a lot more sales,
Yes,
right? Because this is significantly higher than the inflation rate.
yes.
Yeah.
And the blue lines that decrease, are those correlated to the refund kind of cycle, or?
The refund cycle does have a little bit to do with that. So you'll notice in the periods where the refunds spike, the actual sales tax collections appear to be a little bit lower than they are on average. They also correlate to consumer habits. So, following the holidays, folks might be less inclined to purchase, spend more. There's less spending money available in the economy.
Yeah, it's monthly actuals, Jen, so you can see like FY 20, you see the 4 that are low, that's COVID,
see
right? Okay, well, Adam can highlight them. There's 4 that are low there on FY 20. That's COVID, right? Everyone kind of pulled in. But then in the future years, you only see like January's low in 21 and 22. So it's just the months essentially of when spending's occurring more aggressively.
Historically,
or
those
less.
numbers are dropping February to April-ish, January to April-ish.
Right, exactly.
And so to answer the question on the Article 47, so this was part of the Sales Tax 101 resource we provided everybody in March. But just to hit on this again, we currently have an effective sales tax rate of 6.75% in Henderson County. The state rate is 4.75%. Everybody in North Carolina levies Article 39, which is 1% on top of that. Everybody in North Carolina levies Article 40, which is 0.5%, and everybody levies Article 42, which is another 0.5%, which leads us to, a statewide sales tax minimum of 6.75%. And some counties have the authority and choose to levy Article 46, which is an additional 1/4 sales tax. Counties who levy that Article 46 sales tax do not have to share those revenues with municipalities. And in the counties that do levy that Article 46, that obviously brings the sales tax rate in the county to 7%. So more specifically on the sales tax 1/4 option, you all have made a resolution on. This would be like Article 46, but it would be for municipalities. So we as the city would levy a 1/4 sales tax rate on any sales made within city limits. In March of 2021, Pineville proposed a similar local option. So to get this enacted, a few things that would need to happen. The General Assembly would need to provide us authority to hold a voter referendum, and then the referendum would need to be enacted. And based on our projections, the last time the Department of Revenue provided these numbers was 2009, but based on the numbers from 2009 forecasted to now, we would generate about $3.5 million in annual revenue off that 1/4. And in FY 24 terms, next year terms, that would be the equivalent of about 12 pennies on the property tax rate.
Can we just marinate on that for a moment?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you have to do it in 1/4 percentages? Is there a rule on that? So if you want to do 0.15 or 0.1 or whatever, would you?
It would just be based on whatever the law says, and there is a 1/2 cent out there. I think that food sales that Mecklenburg has. There's unique ones throughout the state,
I
but
mean-
they're very far in between. You could ask for whatever you'd like, but you couldn't, if they said you can do a quarter cent, you couldn't put a referendum for 0.1.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying, but you could ask for,
You could ask for
0.1.
less, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think the hindrance in all of this is your Retail Merchants Association, the lobby in Raleigh, and they're concerned about how they do the one-offs in the different municipalities. So, yeah, it's
I got you, there's some math issues here, just for easy math.
Yeah.
So that means that at 0.25%, or cents, excuse me, that is one 1/100th equals a little more than $100,000? Is
Yeah.
two? is-
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe like $115,000, something like that for each
Yeah.
1/100th of a cent?
So we've sent a letter. What else could we do to advocate for this for our community? Because, our residents are obviously in some fashion today gonna see a tax increase. And, to me, I don't feel like it's fair to continue beating residents up, to continue paying for the services for this beautiful community that we see a huge rate of tourism here. And to me, it just seems a bit more fair and equitable to tax everyone as opposed to just property owners. So what do we do? We need guidance.
I'll turn that one to John, but part of it is continuing to tell this story and showing, this would be a benefit to small business in our community. We would lower the property taxes on small businesses. That's the biggest story here.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's a conversation with our chambers of commerce, our small business, our economic development folks, that those are the folks, we're all greatly impacted by, if you live inside the city limits, the services we provide for the entire county. Let me say it again. The services that we provide for the entire county, and in many cases, the region, and other communities around us. So I think the message to our folks, our legislative delegation, and to our businesses, it's going to take the support of our businesses, because there is a lobby in Raleigh that is opposed to this idea of any sales tax increase on the one-off, that our businesses need to get behind us, and we need to work with we need their help to get the retail merchants lobby to consider it, and the other members of the General Assembly to understand that while in one form sales tax will be used as a tax increase in Raleigh, but at the local level, it will be a tax decrease. So the average property owner, or the property owner in general will see a tax decrease. They will see less taxes coming out yearly out of their pocketbook, and so.
And at 12 cents or even 10 cents or pennies, that's a significantly, in ratio form, how much less money they would pay in property taxes compared to what they would pay in sales tax. Like the ratio is just substantially different. And, small businesses right now are, especially with inflation and all of the stuff, I think about my family's income, and I don't get a COLA, and so there are many small business owners who don't get COLAs. They don't have these increases that we generously give to our staff. And I'm glad that we can do that, but, small businesses are getting hit because, again, they're expected to continue with the demand and salary increases and retaining good employees and recruiting good employees, but then their income isn't necessarily changing significantly because everything is costing them more money to do business. And so, this to me just makes more sense. Get it?
I got it.
Nice pun. And just for a visual, to make sure I got my math right, and that is for $100 sales, that tax increase only increases your taxes a quarter.
No.
It's a penny, right?
No, because if it's 0.25%, so 250 would be
quarter penny.
1%. It's a quarter, right? So if it's 0.25%, it only increases it this much on the $100 sale.
It's a quarter.
Oh, it's even less than that. Oh, that's even better. Okay, so it's even, so you spend $100, your little sales tax at the end of your little receipt there will be less than a quarter
Yeah.
increase in value.
And we've got some examples that we can pull up here shortly. Like, I used my lunch, for example, one day at Mountain Deli would have gone from 1173 to 1174. So, yeah, it's very minimal.
Right, so it is a tax increase, but it is so fractionally small that it is just, that will generate this kind of revenue, but for the average sales, it's not that much money.
Correct. It's a huge return on investment for the community.
Do we have the
Money bags,
numbers?
baby. Those teachers, I'm telling you, if we just roll it into cash.
Do we have the numbers for, like, what that comparatively would do? Because I know sometimes the counties and the cities with which they are in can make that, they can choose to make that increase locally, right? And do we have the numbers for what revenue that would bring to the county?
It's going to be very similar. So we make up about, 65 to 70% of the total sales in the county. So they would have a little bit more of that percentage, right? When they enact it, they would have 100% of the sales within the county. So it'd be a little bit more for them, but it'd be a similar number because it's not based on anything but sales.
Okay.
Are we done marinating?
Of marinated.
Okay.
All right. So, hopefully nobody's buying $100 worth of tacos today for lunch. So finally, just want to do a quick recap on general fund revenues and toss in just a couple more significant sources. So again, our revenues in total from FY23 adopted to the FY24 recommended level are increased by $3.7 million, or 18.4%. And we need that just to fund the current priorities. Our ad valorem property tax, again, is recommended at a rate of 50 cents per $100. This is over the revenue neutral rate of 0.4192. Our sales tax is budgeted to increase by 4% over FY23 actuals and estimates. And the other two sources that I did want to mention, we do have some restricted intergovernmental revenue coming in the form of SRO reimbursements and PAL bill funds from the state. And we've also got some sales and services revenue from Public Works completing paving cut repairs, not only for our own utility, but for others as well. And that brings us to,
Adam, can you pause there for a second? I want to
Yes.
highlight one thing on sales tax and the revaluation, because we know that our sales tax is impacted by the tax rates and the assessed value set locally. So this 4%, right, is cautiously optimistic. I think it's really important to, we marinate on that one, because even if we go to the recommended 50 cents, and if, say Laurel Park, for example, had a 44% increase in their value, even if they go to revenue neutral, just their increase being 20 percentage points more than us, they might get a bigger piece of the sales tax pie next year. The reval years are really crazy on how it impacts sales tax, so we're trying to be very cautious about how we move forward with that budget next year. It could come back and be a decrease for us, just based on what happens locally with tax rates.
But you're saying if they were not to change their tax rates?
Yeah, even if they went revenue neutral, just because they've increased 44%, we've only increased 26, they might still gain a bigger share of the pie.
It's
Yeah,
like the Hunger Games.
It's a complete roulette. Yeah,
Yeah.
even if we increase over revenue neutral. So we'll see where it all shakes out, but we won't know until everyone adopts the budget. Yeah.
Is this based on what, total levy? Is that?
Total levy, yeah, so tax rate and value. So if Laurel Park goes up 44% and wherever they land on a rate, that's gonna be larger than our 26%.
So we saw that 4 years ago, or,
Yeah, we did, big time. And
Yeah,
it's
so-
a big decrease in
And
sales
so
tax.
if they didn't go revenue neutral, and they raised like what we're doing,
Yeah,
we stand to lose more of that.
that's correct.
Hunger Games.
I have a question about the paving cut repair work. What percentage of that paving cut repair work is completed?
Tom, do you wanna,
and we're gonna have a formal presentation at your workshop meeting too about paving repair, so,
Okay.
I guess any outstanding, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Outstanding, I mean, they come in every day. And so as they come in, we just schedule our guys to do the work, make the repairs.
Yeah, I just get a lot of emails and phone calls about paving cuts in the streets, and sometimes I'm not sure what the time frame is from when you make the cut to when the cut gets repaired and all of that stuff, but I get a lot of complaints about it. And so I was just wondering, what is the percentage of them that have been cut and been repaired and are completed versus how many there are active?
Okay, yeah, and it's gonna vary day to day. Like I said, we get new work orders every day.
Okay,
And the length of time it takes for us to repair those it just depends on what they're doing. They may be doing concrete, 1 or 2 days, and then asphalt for 1 or 2 days,
okay.
it varies day to
Well,
day.
and I can wait to get this, if there is gonna be an informational session on it, then I can
Yeah.
understand it better.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question on what you asked us, or what you mentioned, and that is, I'm certain in some meetings, you've talked about all of the municipalities, and if they all went tax neutral. If everybody went tax neutral, would we be losing on, sales tax?
I'd have to look. If everybody, including us, we
Yeah,
would
if
be
we all
losing.
went tax
Yes,
neutral.
Absolutely.
Because their values have increased more than our values.
We're the lowest, I think, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, Flat Rock and Mills River were 33, Laurel Park was 44, county was,
that was kind of the point I was
30-something.
trying to lead into when I talked about, our microeconomy and how it
Yeah.
impacts us across the county. And, again, we provide the highest level of service to many of those folks that live in those other areas.
Right, and so I'm sorry, excuse me, John. Right, so we're in the weird situation of, in order to keep the sales taxes, we have to raise our property taxes.
that's one way to look at it, yeah.
And that effect will be noticed in FY '25, just to make that point clear as well.
Thank you for reminding us of that. No, I'm not upset. I wasn't mean, trying to be sarcastic. I'm serious, because I forget about that whole aspect of how it's all calculated sometimes.
So, to keep us on schedule, I am gonna speed through a couple of these expenditure slides, just because I feel like we've hit them in March, but I did want to provide some reminders in here. So, looking at the higher level of our expenditures, the first category that we roll up is the personnel and benefits, which is increased in the general fund in FY '24 by $1.5 million. And that increase includes increases to Elger's retirement contributions. It reflects no increases to our medical insurance rates. It also includes an increase to the 401K benefit, reflecting that 2% match that's currently recommended. It includes 100% payment of our Safer Grant firefighters. The last year of that funding was this fiscal year, in which we received $581,000 of support for those firefighters. It includes the 5% cost of living adjustment and the addition of, again, to clarify the question on that FTE split, 6.5% full-time equivalent employees. So this is one of the ones I'm going to gloss over. This information's been provided. It includes detail on the increase to the ledger's contribution. And again, just a reminder that we've got our performance-based pay committee researching practices to implement But the recommendation for FY '24 is to continue with the current program until the new recommendation is enacted in FY '25. So our differential will go from 1% to 1.25%. So a 1% for meets expectations, a 2.25% for exceeds, and a 3.5% for outstanding.
And I know you want to gloss over it, but I think it's important that the council know, that the five of them know, that if you look at that, our retirement system contribution has continued, again, we have one of the strongest retirement. It's a defined benefit, which means the money is there. The employee, it's not a contribution, it's not like a 401k, it's a defined benefit. And we, the local governments continue to fund that at a level to ensure that it's between 85 and 90% funded, which is one of the best funded pension funds in the country. We continually, every year I have a meeting with all the employees, and we point that out because that is a benefit that the city provides, that you as a city council approves, that the taxpayers provide to our employees, that will benefit them in the future. So you don't always see it, but I think you need to know that it's there, it's being managed, and it is based on, there's a committee statewide that looks at funding it, and it looks at raising the rate to keep it funded based on inflation. It's managed by the state treasurer's office, and you can see that in this case, it's going from 12.10% to 12.85% for our general employees, and then our law enforcement officers from 13.10 to 14. I want to make sure that it's important for you to know that it's there, and it is part of the calculus as we're budgeting. So those numbers are going up too. So
And that's also mandated, is it not?
yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So there's a change to the merit-based system proposed
Yes,
that we didn't actually discuss, right?
this was presented in the March workshop. Yes, ma'am.
So I thought we talked about it, then there was going to be the committee, and then there would be a recommendation. I didn't actually think that we agreed that we would change the merit-based system at that
So this has
point.
been 2 years we've talked about increasing the range of the percentages. So that's what we're continuing here. The changes to the system itself of, what it is to meet expectations, or however that all shakes out, is coming in the next year. So this is just following our existing plan to continue expanding the difference between the percentage points.
And this is on top of a proposed COLA.
That's correct. If council wants us to back up on that, we can remain at the current level or modify further.
Could you figure out what that number would be if we stayed at the FY '23 level?
Yeah,
I know you can't at this moment, but I need.
we'll look and see. Yeah.
Another slide that was presented to council at the March workshop. Again, this is one that I'm going to speed through unless there are any questions. It's just a summary of our dependent coverage, inclusion, and premium changes. Really, prior to FY '20, we noticed some significant increases to our medical insurance premiums. By virtue of the Wellness Committee working very hard to improve the health and general conditions of our employees, we've received no premium changes or decreases in recent fiscal years. And that's continued in FY '24, where we will again have no coverage change, and our premium will remain the same as FY '23. Providing, again, the same information that was presented to council in March, the 401k match analysis. So based on a $757,000 payroll, which occurs 26 times per year, and assuming 62% employee participation, we can find the annual impact of a 2% 401k match, which for the general fund is $128,476, and citywide would be $244,089. Just as a reminder, the other key takeaways in this slide are that the city of Asheville currently provides a 5% automatic contribution, Buncombe County provides an 8% contribution, and Henderson County currently provides a 2% match. Also wanted to provide council the impact of 1% on the cost of living adjustment. So 1 percentage point on the COLA is worth about $141,000. So with no cost of living adjustment, the personnel and benefits expenditure for the city in FY '24 would be budgeted at $2 million. And at the 5% recommended level, we're at about $14.9 million. This keeps us in line with the March 2022 to March 2023 Consumer Price Index, which was 4.98%, which I rounded up to 5.
Earlier, the one you showed for July had it at 3.4. Isn't that right, Brian? The CPI that you had in a whole way.
That was on a different period, but yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And also important to the cost of living adjustment discussion is the fact that not only are we trying to keep pace with the market, we're trying to keep pace with our peer group. So each year, the League of Municipalities and the Association of County Commissioners completes a survey on cost of living adjustment and also performance-based pay increases. This was provided to us just a few days ago, so excellent resource here, but as you can see, might be a little small for you guys, so let me zoom in. On the low end in Western North Carolina, other jurisdictions are providing a 3% cost of living adjustment. On average, our communities in Western North Carolina are providing a 4.7% cost of living adjustment, and the highest cost of living adjustment in our region is an 8% cost of living adjustment. You can also see that reflected in the bar chart below. There were 152 respondents, and the statewide cost of living adjustment average is about 3.9%, and the statewide high is 12%.
And that statistic is merit and cost of living
This is cost of living alone.
alone?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have the merit and cost of living data statewide?
Yes, that is presented in this report, and we can pull it up. That link is live if we need to go into that document.
I would like to see it.
Okay.
And this is also planned, because none of these places have actually adopted their budgets yet.
And it's based on, obviously, survey data.
Yeah.
It's slide 41, Brian.
John, does 266 respondents mean 266 municipalities? Like one respondent is one municipality?
And so while Brian's working on that with Allison,
So
the
why
other-
does it say that they're planning merit increases? I guess I'm confused by this.
Yeah, yeah, I
just realized this.
Okay, so this is actually including merit and COLA.
yeah, yeah.
So I'll pull it up.
It's different screenshots from the same document. They provide it from various sources. The other thing I wanted to say on this is important because when we're trying to maintain our 75th percentile standing, we also have to take into consideration what other communities are enacting as far as their pay and benefits program goes. So to keep in line with the 75th percentile position, if the average is 5%, we need to maintain a 5%.
So what you can see here, so this is the actual COLA screenshot of the same information. So 266 respondents, 5% reported. They're planning on providing a COLA, an average of 4.4, slightly down from last year's 4.7. And you can see the statewide average, the 15% high, 4.4 average, and 1% low. Yes, sir.
Can you scroll back up?
Yep.
So, but it said there that roughly slightly less than 50 are not providing a COLA.
That's correct.
Right, so this is of the ones that provide a COLA. So, I mean, that's not quite 20%, but around 20% are not doing a COLA at all.
Correct.
Okay.
Then you have, and they might have.
That would not be reflected in that graph. Oh, sorry, no, the map, excuse me.
Correct, and what might explain part of that is some communities are on step-based systems, so they don't do COLAs, you just get to the
Right.
next step every year. So
Right.
we don't know the individual, respondents and exactly what each one's doing. So of the ones who did respond, that's what the data they're looking at. And then Jen, on the next page, this is the merit information. So this is the mix-up between the screen grabs. This one is the merit is between 1.6 and 3.9 statewide, with a high of 12. I don't know how they call that merit, but really, the statewide
They're doing a
1.6
great
to
job.
3.9. Do you want to look further in this, or is that what you were trying to figure out?
Comparing that to us, the 1.6% to 3.9%, and what our merit system currently is.
Our merit average is 2.25.
Okay.
Proposed to otherwise, and I found the number, so essentially 0.25% impact by keeping it the same. It's about $30,000. I'll pull this presentation back up if we're good.
Gotcha.
And I'm speaking for myself here, but when we made the pay and class increase, it was important that we were able to get our employees to the 75th percentile. I was not committing to maintaining a 75th percentile at that point. And so if we were to drop below 75th percentile to 70th or whatever that may be for a time period, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. My goal is that we were able to get our employees comparable and better than most places in the state at that point because they were so far off of where they needed to be. So that was the assumption that I made.
Understood. And again, the 5% is a recommendation. We're open to receiving feedback. Would vary from that. And at any point, if you guys would like to provide us direction, we're happy to take it, or we can
Do you want it
discuss
right
that at
now?
the end. If council would like.
I'd say let's finish the big picture and then.
Let's finish big, that's what
dive
I'm
into-
saying, that's what I'm saying, and then we can, it'll help us look at everything in total, that's what I was gonna say too.
So powering through, the next, yeah, the next item to discuss is the FTE addition. So, included in the general fund is a 50% split for a business system analyst, one full-time police officer who will be split. Really, the personnel cost is 50% of the city's responsibility. We're anticipating a contribution from the Boys and Girls Club. And I believe the Boys and Girls Club will also be paying for some operating equipment for that officer in addition to their vehicle. Yes, sir.
So when you say contribution, you mean literally they will send us money?
Yes.
Okay.
Also included is a 4-person property maintenance crew, which includes a crew leader, an equipment operator, and 2 workers. And finally, a traffic engineering technician who's really going to be focused as a group. The traffic engineering team is going to be focused more on parking, but we did want to include it to be reflected in the general fund. So that leads to a total FTE addition cost of $239,000 in the general fund.
And let me stop, I want to make a comment about the property maintenance folks, but I don't, if council has questions about that, I'll make my comment and y'all can ask. So, one of your goals, and this has been in works for over a year now. One of your goals is to improve park maintenance and park facilities. And also, it will go towards cemetery and greenway. So, in order to do that, we put a priority on that property maintenance crew from Tom's perspective as we expand the greenway, as we expand traffic, utilization in the downtown and in parks in general, that park maintenance crew will allow us to, while it's not building new parks, it will allow us to maintain our parks at a higher level and the cemetery too. So that's why we prioritize that the way we did, and that's why that crew is there. So if you have questions about that, we can talk about that. So
I don't at all, because they requested this crew last year, and they didn't get them, and they need them, so.
One other item I would highlight as well is that business system analyst. Currently, we're paying contractors to do coding back-end work for us. Our plan is here is to bring that in-house, adapt, and then, cut those contracts and get those savings back. So hopefully this is a net even position add in the long run.
And as you can imagine, we have lots of software programs, lots of need for databases, lots of just systems that, as the world continues to evolve technology-wise, we feel like it's a position that's needed across the organization. So as we build up our IT department.
And the traffic engineering technician, that's paid for out of
Parking.
obviously the fees and parking fees and things like that.
That's correct.
Can you say kiosk? I mean, not that, I don't mean it as a revenue source, as in, we need somebody to help us make sure the kiosks, day to day, are operating, so.
Sure, no. I'm just saying that's why it has a zero in it, is that one is
That's
covered
correct.
by those, yeah.
So taking a look at the operating budget recommendation for FY '24, the FY '24 budget represents a $977,000 increase over the FY '23 adopted. That's due to various expenditure increases, including utility payments, fuel, liability, property insurance. We've got a new abandoned and condemned housing demolition program to free up blighted sites for infill and redevelopment. It also includes our comprehensive planning, street and sidewalk resurfacing assessment, sustainability study, and the special appropriations budget for FY '24. Through the development process, you'll notice that the requested budget was significantly higher than the recommended budget, and we were able to identify priorities and work with our departments to reduce that recommendation by about $382,000. Our capital program for FY '24 appears lower than the capital program in the FY '23 adopted budget. This is mostly artificial. We're practicing a different method of purchasing vehicles through capital project ordinances, which will be held in the capital project fund. So with those vehicles and equipment totaling $1.3 million, our budget would actually be higher. And that vehicle and equipment loan includes 7 HPD vehicles, 2 fire department vehicles, and self-contained breathing apparatus, 4 public works vehicles, and 1 tractor and 1 dump truck for $469,000. And I've also subcategorized our other capital pay-go in the general fund totaling $799,000. Some of the items include rescue equipment for the fire department, investigative equipment for the police department, as well as traffic enforcement equipment, and a bunch of budget for public works, fleet equipment, and facilities improvements, as well as improvements to the Oakdale Cemetery, and public works, streets, and traffic equipment, and finally, budget for pickleball courts and a disc golf installation.
So Adam, if you bear with me 1 minute, just point out, just so council know, prioritization is, on this case, has gone to life safety and direct service delivery. As we went through the capital items, we really focused on things that, as you see there, the bailout kits for fire department rescue equipment, air monitors, gas monitors, things that were direct life safety or service level. Also point out Oakdale Cemetery, we've developed a plan to allocate roughly $40,000 a year for the next several years to make improvements at Oakdale for some deferred maintenance that we have there. So this is a multi-year plan to look at. And of course, we'll talk about other things down the road, but to deal with deferred maintenance, such as the mausoleum and the other, the building that's out there will have money allocated every year. So we've tried to put prioritization to, again, protecting our employees and the public, but also direct service delivery has been our prioritization from a capital standpoint.
The 7 HPD vehicles are replacement vehicles?
They are.
So moving on to the final expenditure slide before we discuss fund balance trends. Our debt service is increased about $1.3 million or 54%. We have some existing outstanding debt service on the Public Works Maintenance Facility, Fire Station 2, Engine 3, the police headquarters, and previous vehicle and equipment loans. In FY24, our debt service is increasing, mostly attributable to the City Hall and operations renovation, Fire Station 1 project, along with Edwards Park, Ladder 1, and Engine 1, which were covered by the 2022 limited obligation bond, and the additional vehicle and equipment loans. We need to, again, fund those vehicles that were listed in capital.
The second part there is additional debt service, or, because the existing and then the FY24, those numbers?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so the existing plus the
Plus,
FY24
so that's the
new debt
equals means
service.
additional,
Yep,
yeah.
that adds up to that.
And one comment I'll make on debt service, this is a ratio we track in our model, and kind of our go-to is that debt service shouldn't be greater than 15% of our total expenditures. And we regularly stay below that. I think it's a good number to monitor on a high end. Also, to think on the converse is if you're not investing enough in your facilities, if you have a really low debt service to expenditure number, you're probably not putting money back into reinvesting in the community facilities. So we do watch that. This is a pretty standard debt service level. We're not taking an exorbitant amount of debt out. We were at the $3 million level 10 years ago in our debt service payments. So we're on trend here. We're below our 15% goal.
Okay. So moving into fund balance, I wanted to start with a trend line, which I think you all are familiar with. It was, again, presented in the March workshop. The key takeaways here are in FY08, again, same period, we looked at the property tax assessed values on, we were carrying a fund balance north of 70%, so planned saving for future investment, and that is represented by the teal line. So this is the city's fund balance's percentage of total expenditures, and the black line is the LGC's fund balance requirement. As a reminder, this changed year over year based on what other municipalities were doing. We now have a more clear and consistent target from the Local Government Commission, which is 25%, also reflected in our fund balance policy. In FY21, we were at 20%, which was below the LGC's target, and more recently in FY22, we had a fund balance available of 30.12%, which is above that minimum 25% requirement and within our comfort range to, again, hit the objectives that Brian and John mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, which are adjusting for emergency, unforeseen opportunities, and in general, providing service and consistency to the public.
Just point of, we're talking about how we manage our money. 2021, when we dropped to 20%, we knew that. We knew it was a one-year drop. We had a conversation with City Council, because that's when we bought the property for the parking deck, if you remember. We were able to use our fund balance as interim financing to stave off tax increases. We were able to use that fund balance to make that investment, and then we came back. How we managed our money, so.
And so the last slide I'll go into detail on with fund balance is just our estimates for FY24. So the key takeaway from this slide is that we are recommending a budget with a $2.5 million fund balance appropriation. We currently have and $11 million fund balance in the general fund. So if we are 100% to budget, we would end FY '24 with $8.5 million in fund balance. However, based on the modest case estimate we provided details on earlier, we would appropriate $500,000 at the end of FY '24, ending FY '24 with $10.5 million in fund balance, which would be 26.53% available, which is just 1.53% above that LGC target that we've previously discussed. And then these slides have, I think, been presented to council through the budget memo, but I do want to provide a look at the dashboard that represents the current recommendation. So the 50-cent tax rate includes a 5% cost of living adjustment and a 2% 401k match. The 51-cent tax rate would fund those priorities, and in addition, we could hire 2 full-time equivalent police officers for patrol. And the 52-cent rate, if council so chooses to remain consistent, could fund the previously mentioned priorities in addition to a future $10 million park transportation and/or housing general obligation bond and the debt service associated with that.
Can you go back one?
Yes.
On the growth rate development, those percentage means basically additional revenue or additional people living in the city?
Additional revenue, that's
That's
related
if
to what,
developments come online.
yeah, see the 4.43% Adam over there? That's what
Yeah.
Jerry's referencing. That's what I was highlighting earlier in that percent change, like when Ballantyne came on. That's the type of trend we saw. So we have built in
Right.
those entitlements at a certain build, you know.
And
estimate.
that percentage is not necessarily population increase, that is percentage increase in tax.
Assessed value.
Yeah, okay, thank
That's
you.
right.
So that leads us into our desired outcomes and what we're seeking direction from you all on today. So again, where would you like to see the property tax rate? Would you like to follow the 5% recommended cost of living adjustment? Also included is the 401k match. Sorry. As we discussed, the position addition is actually 6.5 FTE in the general fund. And is there anything that we've discussed that was removed from the capital or operating budget that we maybe need to consider to add back in? Yes, sir.
So I think I did my math right, but I would obviously like for you to check over my math. If we reduce the COLA from 5 to 3%, I think that would save us roughly 1 penny.
Just less than a penny.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just
Well,
less than a penny.
Okay, yeah, like I said, I think that, so, I know, for me, council members, I've texted everybody, my recommendation is that we lower the COLA to 3% in order to save 1 penny on the tax rate.
I have a question about I think it was maybe 2 or 3 slides before this, and it said that the kind of projected end was that there would be a 26.52, I think, percent in the fund balance. Maybe more, I don't know. Yeah, 26.53. So, what is 1% of that equivalent to? What it, like, if it
Talking about
was,
dollars,
if the fund balance went down 1% from 26.53,
25.53.
how much is that equal to? Is that, because that looks roughly like another penny.
It's probably a penny, yeah. Because the 26.53 is 1.3 pennies. So,
And does the parks bond necessarily have to be lobbied through the actual tax rate, or could that be lobbied through that penny of this fund balance that we would save? So when you showed the other slide, now fast forward maybe 2
Yeah.
or 3 slides, and there was
the bond.
the 10-minute, the parks bond and housing bond. That can that only be lobbied through an increase in the actual tax rate, or could that monies come from the percentage change of the fund balance
So the payback can really come from anywhere, but what you're pledging as your security is your tax rate. So if we weren't able to pay our debts, the lender would come in and raise our tax rate.
And the fund balance, that 1% is one-time money.
Yeah, it's not recurring. It goes away
Whereas the
after 1
tax
year.
rate is year over year, so.
Right.
And if you did a bond, you're obligating yourself 20 years of debt service, so.
Correct.
If you, again, I would caution it, just remember that fund balance is a saving that you're taking,
Yeah, it's a
that's
single-
one-time money.
Yeah.
That is, once it's gone, it's gone. And you're really restricting yourself for those unforeseen opportunities or those unforeseen emergencies.
That's right.
And everything that you're forecasting today is based off of a moderate assumption.
That's right.
And historically, where have we been in the assumptions?
Pull that up, Adam, and I got that one.
I
So
think we've been better than every
we have
assumption we've
been,
ever had.
we've been, well, just barely. So the estimates we tell you have been within 1 to 3% of what we've said. So historically, we've told you pretty accurately what's going to happen and slightly to the better so you don't have to raise taxes as much as we've said. But ultimately, a couple percentage points either way. So if economy goes horribly bad, 1 percentage point could result in another $400,000 out of our fund balance. However, concurrently, if sales tax comes in really well, we could put money back in fund balance. So just based on the uncertainty of reval with what's going to happen to sales taxes and what's going on in the current market, the modest case is kind of where we feel comfortable. We think we're going to appropriate $500,000. We hope we don't.
And there was an estimated, I think, $275,000 over in sales tax, was like kind of the amount that we ended up being over. Is that number built into this budget already? The
Yeah,
overage is
we
already-
base our sales tax estimate off of the current end of year estimate. So
Okay.
we try to have our sales tax really tight with our estimates because you can see in other budgets around the area where sales tax has come in $15 million higher than they budgeted, and their fund balance swings are huge amounts back into fund balance. So with ours, we try to be very on top of kind of where it's going to end up.
How many vacant positions do we have within the city now?
Oh, we had that, 3 to 4, is that right? But we're currently hiring a couple, so there's not many vacancies. We have a really good
Yeah.
vacancy and turnover rate.
And is, hold on, I forget how I was gonna ask that. Hold on, it'll come to me.
Okay.
You can move on.
Unless someone wants to go, I have another question, but I'll wait because I've already asked one.
No, you can go for it.
Okay, can you go back to the slide with the fund balance? So I know that it says 26.5% for the FY '24, but isn't there something coming in '25 that fund balance is needed to help cover? I'm sorry, John, we talked about something and I'm just tired. Okay, it seems to me that we had talked about, while that is at 26.5%, there was something coming in 2 years that would need.
Just the model?
It could be just the model. I mean,
Okay,
right
maybe it's
now-
just a model that would need some of that fund balance.
Yeah, we're projecting that we're going to continue to decrease.
Right, okay, that's what it was, all right.
That's what I was, because we've talked about, one thing that just I'm concerned about, as the model drops.
Yeah.
We just need to be careful, don't want to go too low this year that it causes us higher increases in the future, so.
Right, okay.
And if development
Sorry, that's
doesn't
what it
come
is.
online, there's a variety of things in this looking out to the future that, could impact us, right? We don't know for sure.
When you say that, can you kind
So
of
if like the
elaborate?
developments we've built into the model, right? So I can't think of one off the top of my head, Washburn maybe. These things we're putting in this model and saying that will come on in FY '26, and that's new tax revenue. If that project were to stall, that's no longer in this, and we're gonna have to consider the existing, right? If we go back to the Venn diagram, right? The improved density, the infill, those things are gonna help keep taxes low in this model is what we're looking at.
And on this one, click it 2 more times.
Forwards, backwards.
Forwards. Yeah. So once again, the part about the bond is money that would be used in the, for lack of a better term, advertising of the bond that would then be voted on. Is that what we're talking about?
No,
Or
we're
is
talking
that-
about
Debt service.
actual debt service. So
Oh,
you
I'm
get
sorry.
$10
I
million
thought you said
to
something
do
about-
projects.
Okay. The actual debt service itself of the bond.
That's correct.
And that is a bond that is not necessarily, is or is not a referendum?
It would be.
That would have to be a
It would be
referendum.
your choice. You
Yeah,
know,
well-
you could borrow $10 million and not put it on a bond. You wouldn't get as good of an interest rate.
You would what?
You would not get as good of an interest rate.
What kind of difference would it be?
It's getting more substantial now that the market's changing. So in the past 5 years, very minimal. There was really no need to do GO bonds because we were getting, 2% interest rates. Now, I mean, John's going to know the market a little better than I do. It could be a couple full percentage points between
Okay.
a GO bond and a LOB. Is that fair, John? I mean.
John B.
Yeah, John B. Sorry. I realize I'm staying up with you, right? Yeah, so I'm looking at
Same
Buchanan.
line of sight here, I like that. John C. is ducking.
More difficult to anticipate, whether or not banks will even be interested.
Yeah.
It's becoming more difficult to tell whether or not we're even going to get interest in the private bank market in taking our debt. So
Commercial lending is bad,
Tightening.
bad.
Yeah.
So is it a fair statement then, at some point, at least on our current, where we are, that in order to do the bond, that's going to be a penny?
A
on the
penny
tax
or a
rate?
little more, yeah. It's,
Okay.
growth's built into that, so
Right, but
I'd have to
that's
pull a
probably a
separate calc
penny.
to do it, yeah.
For that bond, for that, what would be in what we've talked about in this bond issue?
Correct.
So I'll just speak up, and I support a penny less with a 3% COLA, because I feel like between the COLA and employees who are doing exceptional, that's almost a 6.5% salary increase, which still has a very midline, like, average with the state. And again, I feel like when economic conditions are uncertain and things are tightening, it doesn't make sense for me, to spend money over and above right now, maybe to kind of pull back a little bit and kind of reassess next year. And then I actually would really like to consider taking that extra percentage from fund balance also and going to 48 cents. Or trading that penny out for a parks bond. Those are the things that I would like to suggest.
I don't understand the last part, trading it out.
Well,
for
not
park
really.
bond.
So basically, going to the 49 cents, but with that extra penny essentially that would come from the fund bond or the fund balance, to use that to lobby for a parks bond.
That fund balance won't get you a parks bond, I'll just say that outright, because it's not recurring money. So we
But-
could
but we don't actually
pursue a
have the recurring
bond.
money now because it would be.
Yeah, you'd have to raise
it would be a
taxes one
referendum,
penny.
like it
If
would
you
have
do a
to-
referendum, you'd have to raise the tax rate. Right.
And the bond issue would have to be the earliest would be an election in the fall of '24,
That's
correct?
correct.
Yeah. Which means we're really talking about the FY '25 would be, I guess, when you start paying something like that.
It'd probably be in FY '24, we'd have at least a half-year payment.
We would, okay.
Okay.
We
so
could
then-
work on delaying it. We'd figure out when it would impact. If council said, you all need to go pursue a $10 million bond, we would then, now would be the time to do that, because we could then start planning, prioritizing what's gonna be in it. Is it gonna be parks? Is it gonna be transportation? Is it a mix? And
guess-
then putting it out there with what's included, voted on, and then being ready to pay.
Right.
on
So
the
I'm a little
expenses.
confused though, because like from the previous slide, it's 51 cents and it didn't have the parks bond, and then now the next slide is 52 cents and it does have the parks
Right.
bond. So the parks bond is roughly a penny, obviously, but it's not actually now.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, we built that in to get us to the bond. You can see when it comes on, we're actually just below our ratio indicators. That half a percentage point, we feel comfortable throughout the budget process and not knowing what's gonna happen the next few years, that we can work the budget to cover that. When we start talking about 2 or 3 percentage points below our ratios, that's when we definitely get nervous. But right now, yeah, at least a penny would be required to fund a bond.
So currently, though, we have enough money in our fund balance to come down,
1.3 pennies.
and, which would take us to 48 cents.
Correct.
Between that and a 3% COLA.
However, I think, and I don't want to speak for John, but our recommendation at that point, because it's just getting too close to getting us in hot water with LGC, is we would come back and cut services in our recommendation rather than spend our fund balance more.
What services would you cut?
So I think we would get into either look at cutting capital items out of the budget, or the opportunity could be we may freeze some positions so that there's this fine line between spending that fund balance or making changes to expenditures. I think our comfort level, as we think about cash flow and we think about the future and sustainable budgeting, we would probably lean a little bit more on cutting expenditures, because it is recurring money and fund balance is one-time money, is that we would look for ways to become a little leaner and again, probably look at a combination of cutting capital and freezing.
The 401k is.
Or 401k is another way we could do it too. Good point.
Well, let's say we did this 48 cents. What would be the chances of us having to raise taxes again next year?
Immediately, we
year
would be
after?
coming back to ask to raise taxes.
Right. For me, and I don't know if we can pull back up the slide where it showed like what the difference would be in your tax bill from 50 cents to 52 cents.
A lot of clicking, sorry.
It's fine. I mean, I don't know if I'm comfortable
maybe it is.
going lower, going lower than 50 cents, but I'm honestly more in favor of doing the 51, 52, because as a property owner and someone who's thinking about my tax bill, I would much rather see a large increase once than a large increase and then another moderate increase and then possibly another moderate increase. I feel like that hits me a lot harder than this one-time increase. And it makes me real nervous to go lower than 50 cents. I think we'll end up kicking ourselves in a couple of years, and I would much rather set us up for success. I know it is a huge increase for people, but the difference between 50 cents and 42 cents and 52 cents is really not that much for the average property owner. Because I think I fall somewhere in that first range for our property, so it's $10 a month.
I don't want to get too close into that fund balance.
So I think too, the projected continued tax increase that you're talking about also depends on what our spending habits are. And, you know, there has been a lot of spending happening in the last 4 to 5 years with capital expenses. Like, I mean, a lot. It's a lot of money. And, you know, I don't know that we need to keep spending money at that pace. If there's a way to kind of manage that debt service in a way that we are not continually adding that kind of money, to me, those are things that I'm interested in.
And that's kind of what we've communicated at the beginning, right, is right now, there's no major projects. So new parks, these things that we've discussed, better transportation planning, affordable housing, none of those big things are in the budget. We don't have spending for those.
Right, we're just now making up for.
This is
like,
paying what we're due,
Right.
and then we'll make small chips. That's the 50-cent recommendation.
I'll say that with regard to cent 52 in this, I think that one will be reflected, at least in a revenue bond vote, a referendum. And, you know, people will know in that referendum, if you vote for this, you're voting for a 1 cent tax increase to pay for this bond. So I guess to me, that's where I see cent number 52. I mean, it was up last, that's why I say that. It could be any cent along the way. So I feel like that's where that cent should come from. And I guess that'll be in the fall of '24, the earliest we can vote on
I
that.
think that's a great point and I think it hits the priorities of all of you, is that it affects, it impacts Jen's concern, Councilmember Hensley's concern about impacts on the taxpayer, but also the priority, similar priority as it relates to parks. Councilmember Simpson, your concerns as it relates to, wanting to move things forward, and the voters will have a say in that, and that's the beauty. It's pros and cons, but the beauty of a referendum is the public chooses. It's not on the five of you to make that decision. It's on the public. We're doing a Parks and Recreation master plan. We're also updating transportation plans, and we can have that education and talk to the public, and the public can make the decision as it relates to how you want to spend future tax increases. So I would advocate that, but so I think I don't want to drive the ship by any means, but I think the conversation really is, and totally respect with Councilmember Simpson, her priorities and that you have, Lindsay, but I would, based on what I think sustainability and financial, the conversation really needs to be at that, difference between a 50 and 49 cents tax rate. Or less, but realize less in our mind from sustainability and good budgeting would be a reduction in expenditures. And that goes to a little bit of what you said, Councilmember Hensley, about looking at how we're spending money. So we would advocate for less spending and protecting our rainy day cash flow funds. So
I know that original schedule had a break worked in it.
We're looking for direction, and then we'll break.
I just didn't know
If you want to wait till the end of the day to give the direction.
if this might be a moment for like just 5 minutes for us just to have a break, it might give us a
Yeah.
moment to
let's do that.
mingle a
take a
little
break.
bit among ourselves, and then come back and figure out what we're going to do on this.
Sounds good.
I mean, I don't know. Are you guys? This
I'm okay
5
with that.
minutes? Okay, because it is 10:24.
Sounds good. 10:30.
Yeah.
When we made, percentage
Mayor, we are back, and Brian has updated the revenue model to show what, and we can talk about it. I'll have Brian and Adam and Jenny talk about it, but if you drop the tax rate to 49 cents, we just updated the model. So I'll let Brian talk just a little bit about it. So.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, in the model, can I use this, Adam, too? So, thank you. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, it does. So you've got your tax rates over here. You've got your revenue neutral rate, your value of a penny, natural growth rate reval, and then growth rates from developments. And then you have your indicators on the right showing your available fund balance and your debt service to operating ratio and your bond rating. So ultimately what we did here in the break was we dropped the COLA to 3% and dropped the rate recapture by the reval to represent a 49-cent tax rate. And what you see is in FY24, we would have about 27% available fund balance, and in the next year it would be dropping below our 25% level. That's kind of consistent with our other charts. It's about 2 to 3% below there, so we'd probably be, looking at ways to potentially, cut back on our spending or raise taxes in the future.
So to clarify, this is dropping COLA as an addition to going down to 49 cents.
That's correct. 49 cents at a 3% COLA.
Otherwise, everything else in the budget is the same.
Is the same, correct? As recommended, yeah.
Any idea where that would, by dropping the COLA to 3%, where that would average us as far as that, looking at the 75% percentile?
Not without having updates from all the other communities of what they're doing. That was based on a one-time study, and there was a big population group we compared to, so we'd have to do like another study, but that would be, our plan in the next 4 years is re-look at that and where we stand.
And I think keep in mind too that the COLA is in addition to merit increases. See, we would have to, and your basic merit is the lowest the merit increase. What are we
1%.
recommending? 1.1%. 1%. So if you're, the minimum anybody would get would be 4%, and then higher, the next level up is
2.25 is right.
Yeah, so the 3, so you're at 5.25 there, so, and then on up from there, so you've got those, putting that into, and so we had to figure that in to look at the 75 percentile also for existing employees.
The survey that you showed us, do they do that after the budget as well? So like, we could see like what really happened in July?
No,
1?
it's normally just a preliminary survey for budgeting.
Right, so
I don't know if the state treasurer puts out, reports annually from CAFRs, the comprehensive financial reports, but not that I know of that they put out.
But Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, they do annually update their pay, don't they do the? They update their pay study, so we could look at the pay study, which includes all the ranges and everything. We could look at that. They do that after budget, so that is available from year to year.
So, I think, get back to what the mayor was asking, we could come up with sort of a ballpark of, okay, after this budget, we'll know what percentage sort of we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair statement?
I think it's fair, yeah.
Okay.
It'd be a ballpark. It wouldn't be exact as our study, because our study, again, because the way the population groups of that big study, it's hard for us because a lot of our peers are larger than us. So,
Right.
but we could do some.
But we could look locally. We know Buncombe, Asheville, and Henderson
Right,
were
okay.
they were at the top of that pay study that we were competing with. So we could just pay attention there and make sure.
And let's be fair, we don't know what the other folks are going to do, and we as we have raised our salaries, we may have to react. That's in real time as it relates to vacancies and attrition. If our competitors, out there are raising their salaries significantly, we may have to react, but that would be something we would bring back to you in real time. So, and I'm not playing, I don't want to be gloom and doom because I don't know what that looks like, but I just say this, we've learned that this is a fluid, it's a fluid thing, so,
Well, and we reacted when other people didn't last year.
yeah,
Because most of the people around us were not doing what we did.
yeah,
So
that's right.
whatever they do now is gonna be to try to compete with what we just did last year.
You're exactly right.
It's a lot of red, y'all.
But there's a lot of red before.
Yeah,
If you put the 50 back in, it was still a lot of red.
yeah.
Yeah, it's about 1 percentage point less under this model, but yeah, it's in future years, right? It's something we can adapt to. So it is a indicator to pay attention to, especially as it, if it were 23, 22, 18, 15, 20, that's when I would be very worried. It's at 23, 22 and it just stabilizes and comes back up. That's something we can address through the budget process. We are going to be tight. I mean, that's what we'll be coming back and talking to you about is, we might be deferring some capital purchases, things like that. But this does give you a year to see what happens with the economy, see what happens with sales tax and other neighboring tax rates, and gives you the opportunity to come into FY25 budget and potentially make a decision on a general obligation bond and a tax rate decision then as well.
Does this give you heartburn?
This is y'all's budget. Doesn't give me heartburn at this point because FY24 we're in good shape fund balance wise and we're providing good services.
If you remember, our original proposal
It's 49, yeah.
was 49 cents. Our original proposal and with the COLA at 3,
So your negotiation tactics worked out exactly the way you
I
thought they
didn't
would.
say it was, this is
Told you what they did.
this is your budget.
Jeez, John.
I mean,
Yes.
if this is what the majority of us felt like was the best decision, I can apprehensively agree with that. It does give me a little bit of heartburn, but I trust our staff to help us navigate that.
John, I hear direction. Is there any other?
Is that a consensus? I think the consensus is
49 cents.
you didn't get all that?
She's like, 49, 48.
You didn't pick up the head nods and the eye
like an
winks and
auction.
glad we can have fun with it. So I will clarify what I think the consensus is. The consensus is that we will set the tax rate at 49 cents, down from our staff's recommended of 50.
What is happening?
And yeah, at 49 cents, and the COLA will be at 3%. I want to clarify for Councilmember Hensley, in case we had this discussion, I think it's fair to have this discussion related to our merit program. Adam, is there a way to go back to, she raised some concerns about whether that, I just want to be fair to her concern and make sure we have consensus from a city council, what we were proposing for the merit program,
Well, no,
Back one
forward.
more.
Yeah.
that it would, this year, it would be 1%, 2.25, and 3.50. Going forward, that would be built into the budget. Just, I want to stop right there and make sure, since you raised that concern, so. Because that would be our proposal.
And this will be the policy unless it's changed from this point forward. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so we have that direction and make sure, so, that, we can put that into our pay plan and HR can move forward once the budget is adopted with that, so.
Adam. All right, so I'm going to go over the municipal service districts with everybody. Just as a recap, in FY21, it was voted to create the Downtown Advisory Board from 2 separate advisory boards. They have representatives from Main and 7th Avenue. The downtown program also includes an events team, economic vitality team, community character team, and the nonprofit Friends of Downtown. Moving into revenues, as Adam and Brian have discussed, we just went through reval. So the total assessed value for Main Street is just under $142 million. This is an overall increase of 19%. 7th Avenue, we have $24.7 million, which is a decrease of 5.83%. This is due to that loss. Yeah. So there was a loss of about $3 million in personal property. The revenue neutral tax rates, as of right now, they may change, are 0.2032 per $100 of value for Main Street and 0.1967 per $100 of value for 7th Avenue. We're recommending a tax rate of 21 cents. So in 2019, there were discussions started about equalizing the tax rates in the district. We think that this is an opportune time to do so. Brian and I brought this to the Downtown Advisory Board, and it was pretty warmly received. Good? Yeah, all right. Moving into revenues for Main Street, we're recommending a budget of $289,000. This is 3.5 times higher, or 3.5% higher than the FY23 adopted amount. As was mentioned before, we've seen higher than average sales tax, so we're recommending a budget that's 18% higher at $314,000. So the total revenues for the recommended budget is 11.5% higher than last year's adopted amount. For 7th Avenue, for property tax, we're recommending a budget of just over $50,000, which is 22.3% higher than the adopted amount last year. For sales tax, again, being conservatively optimistic, a recommended budget of $62,000. So total revenues recommended are just under $118,000.
And Jenny, it's important to highlight that, this council has historically dedicated sales tax from the general fund to 7th and Main Street in the amounts of assessed value percentages. So 4% goes, or 5% goes to Main, 1% goes to 7th, 94% goes to the general fund.
Moving on to expenditures. As discussed at the March workshop, there's a proposed dedicated downtown public works crew. This personnel and benefits budget includes 2 full-time employees that are split 75 and 25% with 7th and Main. It's 1 crew leader and 1 property maintenance worker. For operating in Main Street, we have a recommended operating budget of $333,000. This includes pedestrian wayfinding signage and $18,000 for Placer AI software. This software will give us better insights on event attendance, business attendance. It seems like a really good tool. For total expenditures, our recommended budget is going to be just about 14% higher than last year's adopted amount. For 7th Avenue, again, with that personnel and benefits, we're going to see 25% of that dedicated downtown public works crew, which equates to just under $30,000. So we have a recommended budget of $113,000. For operating in 7th Avenue, we have the recommended budget of $71,000. This includes that portion of pedestrian wayfinding signage and $6,000 for depot improvements. So our total expenditures recommended there are $184,000. For fund balance, the recommended budget has a beginning of the year fund balance of just under $186,000 with $143,000 in fund balance appropriation. However, our estimated fund balances appropriation is just over $22,000 with an end-of-the-year balance of $163,000. The fund balance will be used to float the downtown public works crew. The current contract that we have is over in FY '25. So by onboarding the 2 full-time employees now, we can kind of eliminate gaps in service. The current contract in Main Street for that maintenance is just over $113,000, and then we have $10,000 in pressure washing costs.
And we have no requirements statewide for fund balance on this, that we have to maintain a certain amount. That's totally up to us.
That's correct.
Do we have the capacity to do the contract work ourselves?
So I was going to make that point. So the idea behind this is the 2 maintenance workers that we are proposing is getting there for us to do it ourselves. Bruce Lowe is, we think will be retiring. Our expectation is to do a couple things. One, to eventually take over that contract. We want to work directly with Bruce to understand everything that he does, as far as how he plants the tulips, the various flowers, understand, and Tom, you correct anything I get wrong, you, and I know Jamie's online and Lou's here, but to understand what he does. Also to enhance our how we're cleaning downtown. One thing we recognized when we went to Greenville, South Carolina, is the investment they made in having a specific crew for the downtown that was downtown every day. Also, we have to maintain the parking deck and the cleanliness of the parking deck and the downtown bathroom. So we're looking for opportunities to absorb those activities, but the first year we felt like it would be a dual program.
Ultimately, it would be 4 personnel total.
And from our discussions, it seems if we do keep that contracted out, it would be about twice the amount that we're paying right now.
We're getting a very favorable rate.
Okay.
Last time we bid it out, everybody else was twice as high as, is that right?
Oh, so we're anticipating him leaving?
Retire.
Yeah, so his contract is over in FY '25, and we don't expect that to be renewed under the same contractor.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So really moving that work in-house, yeah. For 7th Avenue, we have a recommended fund balance for the beginning of the year of just under $87,000 with a fund balance appropriation of $67,000. However, our estimate shows a net increase of $7,600, which would increase it from $86,000 to $94,000. And the current share of 7th Avenue for that maintenance contract is just over $14,000.
I have a question.
Sure.
What is the primary reason that you would create a service district?
Councilmember Hensley, service districts are created to provide additional services that aren't provided otherwise in the city's standard jurisdictional boundary. So any services that occur that are above and beyond what typically occurs outside the district is paid for through the additional tax on the district.
Mm-hmm. So areas of the city that require more.
Additional attention, yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Do we ever analyze other cities or other areas of the cities that may require more attention than just our downtown and 7th Avenue districts?
Not from a service district tax response, no. We know where service demands are, right? We do track that, but, and this is just philosophy on service districts in North Carolina, and potentially a changed philosophy is we haven't, service districts are mostly associated with downtown.
Okay.
But it's not out of the question to say, a certain area is an economic corridor and it needs general new attention, enhanced services, enhanced public safety, enhanced cleaning to improve that area, right?
Okay.
So that could be a decision of the city council and it'd have to be the decision of those property owners in the area. They would have to have a vote to say, we want to tax ourselves more to receive enhanced services.
Thank you.
And just, I pulled up the general statutes. I hope the city attorney's proud of me for doing that. So ways, purposes for which districts may be established, beach erosion does it. For any service or facility or function which this municipality may provide by law, including but not limited to placement of utilities underground, placement of street lighting, landscaping, sorry, Allison, street furniture, landscaping, basically streetscape type projects, downtown revitalization, urban area revitalization, transit-oriented drainage projects, sewage collection disposal systems, off-street parking, watershed improvement, conversion of private residential streets to public streets. So if we had a neighborhood that wanted to convert their private streets to public streets, we could set up a municipal service district to do that. So those are the 6 primary. So providing general services.
Enhanced public safety, does that count?
I do not believe, now you're getting into questions that I would defer to the city attorney, but it does not specifically say that because that is a service. I think it would have to be significantly enhanced. I'm looking at urban area revitalization, transit, or there's several different definitions as it relates to transit or development. So we would have to, either way, we'd have to, but I don't see where you could do it specifically for enhanced public services. That would be an expectation of a general service for the entire community, and to be able to quantify that. But it was something we would look more detailed into. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
Can I ask Mr. Buchanan a question? I know you don't have a mic, well, yeah, you do. So, like, you know how, with our, general fund balance, excuse me, you know how if it's possible, you will move money to try to do a short investment to improve returns. Does that also happen with the fund balance of these funds as well? Are they included in that, or do they have to be kept separate?
So we pool all of our cash together in one account, and it's invested, and then those investment returns are shared with all of the funds.
So any account that has quote-unquote a fund balance is included in that?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Is there something we need to do?
Just direction on comfort level with the 21-cent tax rate. Thumbs and nods. All right. Consensus.
10-4.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can't really write. Yes. Thumb.
Those probably aren't good enough.
Too many icons on the texting.
So we're transitioning from the governmental funds to enterprise funds. I'm going to talk about water and sewer and stormwater. I think Brian will present on parking, and Jenny has the environmental services fund. Providing, again, just the numbers on the balance sheet for the water sewer fund, the FY24 adjusted budget, as well as our estimates. Again, we're using a modest case scenario here for the water sewer fund, anticipating 100% revenue collections, meaning our budget and our estimate are exactly the same, and 97% expenditure uses. So just using 97% of that total budgeted expenditure. At that level, we estimate at the end of FY24, we will add $131,000 to the water sewer fund balance, increasing it from almost exactly $10 million to $10,145,726. Getting a little bit into the details, 96.1%, so the vast majority of water sewer fund revenues come from sales and services. Stantec presented to the Water Sewer Advisory Council on April 24th and to City Council on the 26th. regarding those recommendations and a little bit more detail than I'm going to get into today, but if there are questions, I'm available to assist with those. The budgeted amount represents an 11% increase to water sale revenue and a 12% increase to sewer charge revenue. The recommended fee schedule also includes a lifeline tier, which would result in a decrease in the bill for most residential water customers, while higher volume users, which are infrequent, would notice increases in their monthly bill. And I think the most important item of note, in the FY23 budget, we included a 135% inside-outside water rate differential. We're continuing with our trend of decreasing that 5% per year until equalized in FY30. The FY24 recommendation is 130%. The other significant.
Adam, just point there, I would please ask that our local media would report that we continue to drop our water rate differential to 130%. Thank you.
Also, the lifeline
Yes,
tier.
absolutely.
That's really a big deal. Because it showed in the statistics that most people are going to see if their usage stays as it has been, is going to see their bill go down.
Yes, sir.
It's really to reflect people that use water a lot are going to pay more to use water a lot.
Yes, sir. And to support that point, the average residential user is using about 3,500 gallons of water per month, and that lifeline tier applies up to 3,000 gallons. So up to 3,000 gallons, those customers will notice a decrease in their volumetric charge. The next most significant revenue source for the water sewer fund is permits and fees. They encompass 3.8% of the total fund revenues, and this category includes things like permits, inspections, billing charges for disconnection and reconnection, as well as taps. So this revenue source is much more elastic than sales and services. It depends on the market, system expansion, and development. And in the future, if council provides the direction, the estimated $750,000 added revenue from system development charges would be included in this revenue line, and that would help offset future capital costs by virtue of savings, and also potentially offset future rate increase needs. We are not seeking to implement these with budget adoption. We are asking for direction on whether council would like to proceed with implementation at mid-year, which would be about February of 2024.
One other thing to note here, that 750K, this is a very conservative estimate. That's about 140 or so units. So if we had some of the entitlements come through that are much higher than 140 units, that revenue number is going to be a lot higher and will offset significant capital project needs.
So to get back to your comment there, Adam.
Yes, sir.
We're not deciding on that today.
We would like direction on whether council would want more information and more detail on the system development fees, and we would target an implementation of February 2024.
We want not direction on if you want more information. We want direction on if you want us to pursue these. And if we need to pursue these, then we will start down the detailed process of implementation.
And would this be the kind of thing that, like, you know how we do when we do our budget, we also have a list of fees. Can you do that in the middle of the year, or it would not start until FY25?
You could adopt these
You could do
mid-year.
Any other than tax rate fees can be adjusted mid-year.
Okay.
Or
At what point of the development would the system development charges kick in? At the point where they apply for the water, or when the development gets approved? Or?
So that's if we want to move forward, those are one of the, I think, 3 or 4 items we really want to work out, especially with business advisory and other committees, and bring you a formal recommendation on when it occurs, the actual rate, 100% of what we can charge, 75% of what we can charge, so on and so forth. I know she's sitting up there, so I just want to make sure. Okay.
and there's a significant legislation
the general statutes requires a very specific, detailed process. It has to be a further study, and there's some things for the public that we have to do. And so that's why we're asking to just get direction with the idea, and implementation will be in early 2024.
I'm definitely interested in moving forward with it.
Me too.
Me, yeah.
I feel like it's echoing.
Thank you.
Echo.
Understood. So moving away from our revenues and talking a little bit more about the expenditures that are included in the FY24 budget. The budget again reflects the cost of living adjustment, which after council's received direction, we will adjust. In addition to the cost of living adjustment, the budget also includes a 6.5 FTE add for the water sewer fund. So that's the other half of the business system analyst who will be paid out of the water sewer fund. 2 customer service field representatives, 1 utilities engineer, and 1 3-person line maintenance crew.
That means you're hiring 3 people?
Yes.
Okay.
Under the operating category, there was a $233,000 decrease from the FY23 adopted level to the FY24 adjusted level. We decreased mostly one-time contracted services and supplies accounts. Our utilities and chemicals costs have also decreased. The operating budget also includes a $100,000 transfer to the capital reserve fund for future capital projects and increases for property and liability insurance, events, wellness committee offerings, and safety program options. The capital program is one of the most significant portions of the water sewer budget. In FY24, we're recommending a $241,000 decrease. However, we are transferring $589,000, which is not reflected in capital, specifically for capital purchases out of the capital project fund. So with that included, the total capital budget for FY24, the recommended level is just shy of $1.4 million. That includes things like vehicle replacements, equipment and other excavator replacements, generators, other needed operating capital, and line site and facility improvements. One of the largest categories for the water sewer fund in FY24 is our debt service, budgeted at a recommended level of just shy of $9 million. It's a $663,000 increase over the FY23 adopted budget, and that increase is due to the anticipated debt service on the FY23 revenue bond we just issued with the projects listed above. So Fleetwood, Apex, Church Street Sewer, the I-26 utilities portion, some AMI meters, the dredging and improvements at North Fork, and a Vector truck acquisition.
So, Adam, before you leave this, a couple of points as it relates to the debt in the capital projects. 2 things to note. One, the largest of those, the $3.1 million project, is a project that we had no choice. That is relocating utilities along I-26 as part of their widening. And so we are, if you may remember several years ago, as we talked about with the DOT projects, a lot of that comes into our shared costs associated with their projects, which rents 25%. What's our cost share?
25, we actually heard from some DOT folks that might be changing.
Okay, so that is a little bit out of the council's hands, so show that, we do have, in some cases, I will give them credit, if there's opportunities for betterment, which means we can, while they're replacing these lines and economies of scale, we do better the situation in large lines to try to gain economy of scale while the contractor's there. But I would point out that projects such as, so you think about this project, Highland Road,
Highland Lake Road.
Highland Lake Road, there's some other projects around 191 that are around that you'll be seeing other debt service to replace those lines there. Also, Apex is the start of a larger project associated with Long John Mountain there that will ultimately have a cost savings in the future and help with reliability related to pumps. So just want to point out a couple of things in there to continue to be proactive on our utility side.
Thanks for that, John. That's an excellent lead in to the next couple of slides, which are our major, our 10-year plus capital improvement plan. So this is everything that's not pay-as-you-go funded. So none of this is included in the pay-go funding. This is all revenue bond, grant, SRF loan, or otherwise funded projects. Some of these projects may be funded by reserves, depending on how much we can save through the coming fiscal years. So the CIP goes through FY33 plus, and it includes $291.6 million of expenditures. The system development charges that we will again provide more information on and continue pursuing would help offset some of the future capital needs and other revenue sources and options that we would need to fund the projects. So just looking at the immediate next fiscal year, one of the most important projects that's included on this list is the biosolids drying system, budgeted at about $12.5 million. That would be a major operating expenditure save for the fund once that project is complete. There is a large waste hauling contract that could be removed. It would also create some efficiencies and potentially generate another revenue source for the fund through sale of that waste, which would be fertilizer grade, I believe. I'm not going to read all these projects, but some of the other important things that council has been made aware of since our last budget workshop meeting. The headworks and flow equalization project is included with construction anticipated in FY26. That project is just shy of $30 million and completes various improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. In FY25, we get a brief reprieve from the multi-million-dollar projects, some smaller line replacements, and smaller facilities in FY25. Looking farther ahead, we've got some major line extension and improvement projects in FY28, as well as additional improvements to the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant. And the furthest possible out, we've got a notable $44 million expansion to the wastewater treatment plant. So again, not reading over all of these, just glossing on some of the high points, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to help, and I believe our engineering and water sewer team are in the room and available to assist with questions.
Can you go back 2 slides?
Yes.
The $17 million Barker Heights sewer project. Can you just explain a little bit of that? And then is it planning and engineering are the kind of the first 2 years, and is that why it's like significantly less than it bumps up?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Right. Any of those you see, it will typically be the engineering and planning phases or assessments, environmental assessments, followed by the construction number.
And can you describe that project?
Brent, do you want to come talk to that one a little bit?
Brent is like,
Yes.
Just looking for some background on what that project is.
Yes.
So the Barker Heights area has a high density of failing septic systems that we've known about through the health department, through the environmental health folks, and we submitted an SRF application for that project last year to extend public sewer into the area. We didn't get it, and it's just important to keep it in the CIP just because that allows us to apply for the funds again, and it actually gets us more points. Any project that's in a CIP, you can apply for and you get more points.
What are the reasonings, or like, is it graded or a point system? I mean, obviously it's a point system because you're just saying that, but like, What were the shortcomings for us to be able to receive the funds to do that project?
There were too many applications statewide and not enough funds to fund it. And actually, the spring round was just due last week, and we did not put in an application for that because of the fact that there's even less money available this round. But we're told there's supposed to be some more or additional funds available in the fall round. Those particular projects, they do applications twice a year for the SRF.
And how much money does that yield if we were to get that? Is it the
So-
total amount?
It was capped at, I think it was 10 million. So, we would be on the hook for the remainder of that.
Okay. And that project is in the county, right?
It's in I believe it's ETJ.
There's part of it in the city, part of it in the ETA. I think it was like a split, I thought.
None of it is in the corporate limits, so most of it, even if it's in the ET, it would be serving folks that live in the county.
Okay, thank you.
And one point that Brent mentioned is that I just want to hit on in this chart and with all of our capital planning processes. These are prioritized, and there's a more intricate number system in play that helps the engineering team prioritize this. So just want to thank them for all the work that they do prioritizing these projects. It really helps us out in our bond issuances and our applications for state revolving funds and grants.
What do the numbers in the yellow column mean?
That's the prioritization.
That's the prioritization, okay.
Yes. So final note on the capital improvement plan, I've already hit on the total amount of $291.6 million. There's various financing options available. We pursue grants, we pursue SRF loans, and we also have options to issue revenue bonds in the future. This capital improvement plan, in addition to our debt issuances, is the major driver of rates for the Water and Sewer Fund. And again, the SDCs may help to offset some of the costs of these projects and the need to go out for debt issuances to fund the projects. Finally, not going to read these, but Stantec did present the rate recommendations at the April 26th meeting. So this resource is available in the PowerPoint, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the specific rates. If not, then we are through with the Water Sewer Fund.
Well, now, here's something we have not had.
This is new.
This is a new one, yes.
I do want to just highlight that, our utility department does really great work, and these rate increases that are just annual rate increases, that commitment from city council keeps our system running really, really well. I mean, this is the reason we make it through very tough kind of natural disaster type situations in the winter and keep the system running really well. And just want to thank the utilities department. They've got 4 separate master plans for this. We do rate studies, and this is just the cost of providing great drinking water to our citizens. So, parking fund, I'm gonna be really quick. We've beat this one to death over the past year. But ultimately, the one thing I really just want to highlight, so our fund balance from FY22, we started with 294,000 to the positive. By the time we end FY23, we're going to be in the negative about 230,000. And then our estimate for FY24, we're going to put 43,000 back in it, so it's going to improve the net position. We'll be at $186,000 negative fund balance. However, the key thing to pay attention to here is once we reconcile the parking deck project, I expect us to be able to kind of net even that out, and hopefully the parking fund in FY24 going forward will be generating a little bit of a surplus year over year. So it's looking good right now. Once we reconcile the parking deck project, we'll have some savings from that, put back into this fund balance and clean things up. And then we will have an update for the June workshop, but what we've seen to date is we're averaging about 29% occupancy, which is better than our historical numbers for March and April from our lots. That's our historical data we have to look at. And Main Street and the avenues are running, and the deck, all of them are running at a rate that was in our model, so it's very good to see that for the first 2 months. You don't really know what you're going to get when you start one of these, so we're going to keep watching it, and we're going to come back and talk with you all about what we're hearing from everybody and what's going on with the fund in the June workshop.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
If we ever wanted to discuss lowering parking rates, we really, I guess, need to wait to the end of FY '24, because then we'll have a year's worth of statistics and know financially if we could actually do that.
I would highly recommend that, yes.
No, I'm saying, there's no way to know that until we get through one fiscal year
Absolutely.
of this system.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I have on parking.
Where's Mike Huffman?
Last time you guys are going to hear from me today, I think. The Stormwater Fund is the last enterprise fund I'm going to cover, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jenny. The FY '24 Stormwater Fund budget includes a $6 rate with a $300 cap. That's estimated to generate $1.2 million in revenue. We've also budgeted $1.36 million of expenditures. Our current stormwater fund balance is about $197,000. Looking at just the adjusted budget, appropriating $279,000, we would end FY '24 with a negative fund balance. However, based on estimates, we will use $110,000 of those of fund balance, under the estimate. So we would draw down our fund balance from $197,000 to $87,000 to end FY '24. In the stormwater fund, revenues are 99.5% stormwater fees. So currently that $5 per month per ERU and $250 cap. In FY '24, again, the recommended rate is $6 per month per ERU plus a $300 cap. And $1 on the stormwater rate generates about $211,000 of revenue. Based on our CIP, and I'll get to the amortization table in just a second, we will need a rate of about $9 per month with a $450 cap to fund our capital and ongoing debt service costs. And this is the amortization of a $7 million master plan construction for just one stormwater basin. So this is a major driver of our stormwater rate assumptions moving into the future. We assume a $7 million revenue bond stormwater debt issuance under a 20-year term at a 4.5% rate, which would be favorable, and level debt service. So as you can see in the total debt service column, that would generate $538,000 of additional expense for the fund after that bond is issued to do those stormwater construction projects that Mike and his team have worked so hard to identify through the Wash Creek Basin Master Plan. And as a reminder, we have additional master plans coming, which could identify additional needs for more stormwater revenue to fund future debt service.
And one thing I'll add from Mike's perspective, probably, speaking for Mike, I hope I'm not saying it wrong, but we wouldn't necessarily, $7 million, this is just an idea of what we would do. I think once we had more projects come in from the other master plans, we would prioritize which ones really are our top of our list, right? So we wouldn't spend all $7 million just in Wash Creek out of the gate. We would probably spread that money around.
So does that mean that we don't start doing these until FY '27?
Major projects, yes.
Other than, remember, there's a significant number of grant dollars that Mike has received that are out there that will be focusing on those projects and those things too. So I don't want to discount it all be operating, but there's, almost $4 million in grant dollars. So.
I just asked that because I know the reason we created this fund is so we could start raising capital, so we could start fixing stormwater issues, big stormwater issues.
So that's a great caveat into, and I'll do this on Mike's behalf. So the original budget proposal, unless you've got a slide on this, do you, okay.
I don't have a slide on the 750 proposal, but a $7.50 rate per month was proposed to the Business Advisory Council. We heard their feedback and chose to edit the rate recommendation based on that feedback and provide a more tiered approach that would gradually increase the fee rather than spiking it significantly in the first year.
And it wasn't so much just the residential rate of 750, it was affecting the ERU, which then affected the cap rate.
Yeah, and we were
correct?
raising the cap, it's a 750 and the cap rate would go up to 375. So based on that feedback, we reduced the ERU rate to $6 and a 300 cap. It would have been a 50% increase percentage-wise, and their Business Advisory Committee felt like that was too much in 1 year.
So the stormwater rate model isn't quite as technical as the water sewer rate model or the general fund model. But under this recommendation, you can see the increase in the fee and the cap each year and what that does to our surplus and deficit for the fund. So in FY24, the $6 fee with a $300 cap would produce a $265,000 deficit, which means fund balance would at least be budgeted to cover our expenditures in FY24. In FY25, we would approach council if estimates prove accurate and recommend a $7 fee with a $350 cap. That revenue would generate a deficit of about $48,000. And looking towards 26 and 27, you can see a surplus where we're building up that fund balance in the stormwater fund for capital project expenditures with a $95,000 deficit anticipated when that debt service comes online for that $7 million stormwater revenue bond issuance. So letting you guys marinate on that a little bit more and just talking about the expenditures that are included in the budget for FY24. Under personnel, aside from the factors that we've discussed previously, which we will adjust, the stormwater fund also includes a split for the new property maintenance crew in Public Works, which is 1 crew leader, 1 equipment operator, and 2 workers. The 401k match also has a slight $5,600 impact on the personnel budget in the stormwater fund.
And I think from, well, go ahead, and when you finish, I'll close. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. The operating budget includes budget for engineering services related to the work Public Works does to help with the management of curb, gutter, line replacements, day-to-day operations. It also includes a portion of the brush and leaf grinding contract for $27,000, that total contract. That would be about $54,000, so this would be half the contract. It includes $50,000 for construction materials and $10,000 for mapping and imaging needed to manage the system. The capital portion of the stormwater budget includes $100,000 for 7th Avenue streetscape related stormwater infrastructure, $150,000 for green infrastructure improvements across the city, $20,000 for stream bank stabilization, some equipment replacements, and also easement and right-of-way acquisition where needed. Yes, sir.
So that first project then, that is improving stormwater infrastructure, is that correct? That
The 7th Avenue streetscape?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I don't know exactly what the detail is on it.
That's okay,
There's a,
but I'm just saying that this is the fund actually creating
Yes, sir.
capital improvements to
Yeah,
how we deal with stormwater.
The fund's able to do $100,000 type projects. It's
Sure,
when you get into the $2 million project that.
No, I get it, but we are doing some of that now
Yes, sir.
with the fund.
yeah, there is capital being purchased out of the fund. Yes, sir. And it also includes debt service for about 6% of the 2023 installment financing contract that council just chose to pursue. And that's based on the salary splits of everybody in this building and City Hall. So we felt 6% was a reasonable cost for the stormwater fund to absorb in relation to that debt service. So there's a $23,000 increase recommended in the FY24 budget. And I also wanted to highlight all of Mike's work. So below the line, some things that are happening that may not be immediately evident. Mike did receive a significant grant from both the NC Land and Water Trust Fund, I think, and the DWI for a total project budget of $3.1 million to fund the Lower Mud Creek floodplain restoration project. That requires a match from the city of $144,000. Mike also received a significant grant from the state, a 319 grant for Sullivan Park stormwater improvements. About another $110,000 match from the city there. And we received, I don't want to call it free, but we received a $400,000 grant with no match requirement from DWI to do additional master planning. So Mike's really innovated and done work to help us mitigate some of the need to issue debt right now. So that very much helps the fund, although there are some grant match requirements associated with those projects. That's it.
We would just be seeking direction on comfort with the $6 rate.
And that was going to be my point. So just so council knows and the public listening and our media partners, when the management team is and staff, particularly Brian and I are looking at the aggregate of all funds, we are looking for what the impact across all sectors of our community are in the aggregate versus individual funds, right? So you've got the general fund, the water and sewer fund, the environmental services, and we felt that this was one location from the stormwater fund, and Mike and his team do a great job advocating, but felt like it was one opportunity as we look at the aggregate to reduce our original recommendation from $7.50 down to the $6 level, because we look at that as in the aggregate what we're going on in the other funds. So this is an opportunity to have a less impact on our customers, and so that's why we felt comfortable. I felt like it was from the management team's perspective to drop it, our recommendation down. So as we look at it in the aggregate for everybody, so I just want to let the council know that we, Brian and I, keep that in mind as we're looking across the board at all funds at Howard, because at the end of the day, the business owners and the public, they just look at the total amount, right? So whereas the rest of our team has to look at it by fund. So I just want to make that point from council's perspective that we are keenly aware of that and look at the aggregate. So.
I think the recommended rate is fine. I will say that I've heard from several key players in the business community that there seems to be some sort of miscommunication as to what these fees were originally intended for, and that we are already using it for some sort of capital projects. So I don't know if we can do some more communication to say, yes, we have started these smaller projects, but also the fees that you've been paying helped Mike leverage to be able to get those grants. So not only have we been using the money we've taken in for projects already, but we've also been able to amplify it by getting this grant money so that they can actually see that they're making an impact now as opposed to the bigger impact that we're going to be having later. I think that may help them kind of understand, because right now I feel like there's a disconnect between what we're being able to do and what they're paying in, and they feel like they're not getting anything in return.
Yeah, we don't want it to seem like we're hoarding money, waiting for something happening way out in the future, that we're actually using that money now.
Yeah.
Understood.
All right, so I'm going to go over the Environmental Services Fund with you. So we are coming with the recommendation of a $3 rate increase. If you remember from the March budget workshop, we provided the fact that we are one of the cheapest in the region outside of the Lions Club, who only provide basic garbage services. We do provide white goods, recycling, leaf collection. And so in order to keep up with that service level, again, we're recommending a $3 rate increase, which would take the 32-gallon container from $20 to $23, and the 96-gallon container from $22 to $25. This would leave us with a total recommended budget for the ESF fees at $1.8 million. It's an 18.5% increase over the FY23 adopted amount. Looking at the expenditure side of things, personnel and benefits, we have a recommended budget of $1.2 million. This is 6.7% higher than the FY23 rate. This does include that 5% COLA and the merit, so that will be decreased after we make our adjustments. The operating recommended budget is $617,000. This includes the other half of that leaf and brush contract. We also have $50,000 for a comprehensive route study and $20,000 for tree removal in right-of-ways. Capital, while you see $0, that's because it's been moved out into the capital project fund. We do have a $500,000 loan budgeted, and that is for the equipments and vehicles that you see here. So $75 for that refuse truck, $125,000 for a leaf machine replacement, and $300,000 for the garbage truck replacement. I do want to note that with the leaf machine, there are some safety concerns with our current machine, and so this would not only make it more reliable, but would be safer for our employees as well.
I have a question. So in all of these funds have all included the 5% COLA. So what does that 2% do to these budgets?
I don't think we know that answer off the top of our heads today, but we'll get that number for the budget adoption.
Looking at the recommended budget for fund balance, we have a beginning of the year fund balance of $261,000 with an appropriation of $82,000. Our estimated fund balance represents a $44,000 increase, going from $261,000 to $305,000. So like I said earlier, really we're just looking for your recommendation on that $3 rate increase.
I'm fine.
Recommendation on- Yes. A lot of numbers today.
It's stupid in here.
It's almost lunchtime.
Yeah, so that concludes all of our fund presentations.
I'm gonna wear a toboggan when I come back.
And we're ready to break for lunch, and we can come back with special appropriations after lunch, if that works for the city council. All right, so we will have that discussion when we come back at 1 o'clock.